You either is or you ain't. You do or you don't. You can or you can't. Or you will or you won't. Either way, baby, a good man, well, he's hard to find. Welcome to the One More for the Good Guys podcast, where good guys gather to shed light on the good life, the people, and the good things that make it that way. I'm Mike McGill with my co-host, Jamie Akins. Now, raise your glass, lend us your ear, and let's have one more for the good guys. You either is or you ain't. You do or you don't. You can or you can't. Or you will or you won't. Either way, baby, a good man, well, he's hard to find.
On today's guest episode, we have our friend and soon-to-be yours, Kentucky native, singer-songwriter, and online influencer, Brandon Fuson, also known as Tennessee Brando. A lover of music, whiskey, and wrestling, we talk about it all. Without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brandon Fuson.
Now, sorry, don't cut
I just can't remember which one it is.
Yeah, it was like a red, kind of a
red
like
and white, or
red and white. It was kind of glossy looking.
Yeah,
but it's like the first one I've ever lit up and went, nope, I'm not. Yeah. I can't even finish it.
Yeah,
I just maybe took 2 hits off of it. Just had to stop.
That's the worst feeling, man.
It is.
I hate that so much.
He had the same kind of experience with the one he did, and it was just he just called it a dog rocket.
Yeah.
It's like I can't even finish it.
I've had some I like better than others, and I've had some I didn't care too much for, but I would finish it just because I was committed.
Yeah.
At that point,
I've had a few like that just weren't.
Sometimes too, you're sitting there saying to yourself, "Well, maybe it'll get better." Because sometimes, I mean, there's been a time or two
they do.
Sometimes they do, but
yeah, sometimes they will.
I keep looking at it going, this was $8.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it more time,
Yeah.
But I threw, with those Rocky Patels that I had with that silver band, what were those things called? 15th or something?
15th. I think it was the 15th silver and black band.
I threw 10 of them in the garbage.
Yeah.
Because of that, because I smoked 2 or 3 in a row and just couldn't do nothing with it. So I just threw them away. Why am I bothering with this?
If I'm trying new stuff and maybe I just don't like something, or I do, that's one thing. But if I'm having if I'm having to work to smoke it,
mm-hmm.
or to make it work, to make it act right, to make it, fuck that.
Oh, I know.
That's just a heartbreaker. Jamie got one of those draw tools that's pretty nice, that like if you get one, because every once in a while you get one that's plugged.
Yeah.
And this thing is it's got like a corkscrew end on it.
Like an auger. Like a little bit of auger.
You just screw it down into the cigar.
So it's almost like a cigarette.
And it opens it up.
Oh, okay.
So when you pull it out, it grabs tobacco and kind of clears the chamber,
It's indispensable, man. It's in that cigar glue. I bought a little bottle of that cigar glue.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff too.
And this, I used up my first bottle.
Yeah.
But this new bottle I got was the same price, about 4 times as big.
Yeah.
And a little goes a long way, but like every one of these Perdomo 10th anniversaries, because they're Connecticut wrappers, not this, but the one I was talking about, and it always pulls a part of the wrapper off when you take off the band every damn time. That's almost, because the wrapper's so thin, it just pulls it up.
Connecticut cigars are like that too.
Yeah.
I got some to give you, and I got some to give you. But I've found these new, they're called Villiger, and they're called, cream.
Got a picture of it right here.
Oh, what is it called?
It's called the Villiger Quellar.
Yeah.
What whatever the hell that says.
I can't remember. For some reason, I'm trying to read it and I can't. I used to know it.
Cuellar.
But
I guess.
Any rate, they're all they're Dominican long fillers binder and Ecuadorian shade Connecticut. So just like a white.
Yeah.
Monty. And cooler cream. But the cream is spelled with Kreme, kind of like Krispy Kreme.
Oh, I like it already.
Yeah. yeah. But man, I got those things for I got them for less than $3 a piece. And I'm telling you, because I can smoke at work and I smoke one just about every morning with coffee and stuff. At that price point, shit. And the best price you're going to find probably like the Monty Whites or something along those lines are what, $8 a piece, $7 a piece?
Yeah.
At the, if you might find a Cigar Page might have some kind of crazy deal on them. I'll send you every once in a while when I see them or something. But for less than $3 a piece. And I'm telling you, and the construction, they burn perfect. They look great. They taste great. They're my new favorite. I mean, as far as a budget brand, especially on the, being on the lighter side for
those Cabanos.
Oh yeah, those are really good.
Or Cabanos, whatever they're.
You need to try one of those.
Man, they're like $75 a box.
Dang.
And if you get them online, if you go to JR's in the store, they're 3 times that. But for like Churchill's too. But
the Churchill 20 to a box. What you said were $85 right now.
$85.
Wow.
I mean, they're great. They are really good.
They're rolled especially for
JR's.
Yeah, for JR or Altadis, which owns JR.
Yep.
Which Altadis owns Monte Cristo, Romeo Julieta, H. Upmann, all those brands. And I just seen where Cigar Authorities got them now. They just decided to sell them to them too. But so I'm anxious to see how. But real good. The Robustos are like a 5x50, so they're a real traditional size. They're not real fat, not real big, and the Churchills are the real traditional. They're 7x48, so they're small ring gauge, but they're long cigar like a Churchill, And
they're equally good in both sizes, and that's something that's pretty rare. We tell this talk all the time. So
they're very straightforward. They're not going to be any kind of big,
flavor profiles, one dimension basically, maybe 2, but they're just
little pepper heavy, a little pepper forward, I should say, not really heavy, but a little pepper forward, some citrus, maybe a little orange zest or something like that. Just real nice cigar, man.
And they're good for in the morning too. I mean, I smoke in the morning. I smoked that Maduro this morning.
If you're looking for something with a little more oomph. There's nothing wrong with that. And then that other brand we stumbled on was Nica Libre.
Oh yeah,
those are a really, really good.
Seems like I like a Connecticut in the morning for some reason with coffee.
I do too.
I don't know. Like Maduro seems to be more of an evening thing for me.
Yeah.
But there's been times I've woke up and started with a Maduro.
Yeah.
It just depends on the mood.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. I had normally I'm a Connecticut or a Habano wrapper guy in the morning or the daytime, and the other morning I for whatever wild reason I had one of those Brazilias that I'd had for forever.
Yeah,
I was like, I'm smoking that big son of a bitch this morning.
That was today.
No, just the other day.
Was it plugged like the last one?
No.
Good.
It wasn't. There was only one out of those.
I mean, that's another CAO that's one of my favorites, the Brasilia.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I really like that one a lot.
And I like the, I have yet to have the Italian. The Italia.
That might be my least favorite so far, but it's still good. I would still smoke it again.
Yeah.
But out of
I
all
like
of
the
them,
Colombian.
Yeah, the Colombian's really good and the Brazilian's good.
Yeah. I like it.
Those Amazon size that I have in the Brasilia, they're about 4 hour smoke, man.
Yeah.
I mean, they're big. I got them for literally nothing. No, they were so cheap. And I thought, man, I'm going to try those.
The size is called Anaconda.
Anaconda, that's right.
Yeah.
They have an Amazon Basin. Don't they have an Amazon Basin cigar or something?
Yeah.
I got it mixed up. Anaconda's the size, but you can imagine it's ridiculous. We're rolling. I've been rolling.
And it's in a perfecto size too.
Yeah.
So it's that
shape.
odd. It's kind of like it kind of looks like a bat. Bam would carry around on the Flintstones. It's that weird, just that weird shape.
Yeah.
But
it's cool.
That Oliva Perfecto that you got with the gold ends.
Oh yeah.
Really,
that's a real cigar.
Really good.
Yeah.
And not really high either. They look like they ought to be expensive. They got like a gold wrapper on the tip. I mean, they come 10 to a box or something, but it's a regular V, Oliva V. When I first started smoking,
I think they come in a 12 count box.
They're 12.
But they're a really unusual shape.
Yeah,
they're almost like they're real kind of skinny at the foot, but then they get broader at the top.
I think I've seen those. I think I have.
They're a little unusual, but
I noticed that when I never had one that shape before, and I noticed when I cut it, the draw is real concentrated because of that.
Yeah.
And it really smoked really well. And when I first started smoking Oliva V, that was the thing, man. They were hot then.
Yeah.
And I really didn't like them then.
Yeah.
And then we got into those Milanos in the V series, which might be my top 5, really.
Yeah.
Have you had one of those?
Yeah, I have. Those are real good.
And then I thought, well, of course, he gave me one, the ones he bought, and I was like, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And by the way, this today we're started. So when I'll cut this all out, and you can introduce and start, and then we can talk about what we're smoking. But this sun grown is much better than that Maduro I had earlier. Yeah. Perdomo just released their 30th anniversary cigars.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and all the Perdomos, the anniversary series come in a Connecticut wrapper, a Maduro wrapper, and a sun grown.
Yeah,
we smoked. I bought a pair each so we could try them out and do a review on them. And the Connecticut is fantastic. I mean, it is the 10th anniversary Connecticut is one of my favorite, probably my favorite Connecticut smoke.
Yeah.
Champagne.
Mm-hmm.
You've had one of them.
Yeah.
But this new one might be better.
Well, that's cool.
And then the Maduro, he had a bad experience with it canoeing, and I smoked mine today, and it burned good, and it looked fine, but it kind of let me down. I was like, because they've been talking it up for, it's been like anticipated forever. 30th anniversary, 10 years. I don't think they got a 25, do they?
No, they have a 10, 20, and now a 30. And then the 30 was supposed to come out in 2020. Of course, pandemic hit, and they were boxed and ready to go, ready to be shipped. So they spent 2 extra years. So a total of 17 years total before they were made and before they were sent out to the public. So
it's funny too, because when I first started smoking cigars, there's a lot of the lingo that you hear. It just kind of sounds like pretentious bullshit at first. You know what I mean? When you first hear it,
really does.
People talk about their palate and all this stuff, and you're sitting there going, "It's just a cigar." That's what you're thinking when you first start.
Taste a bunch of fucking smoke, you asshole.
And then as time goes on, you're like, "Wait a minute!" You catch yourself doing all the things they were telling you to start. And it makes perfect sense, and you're like, "Yeah, it's no joke."
You can taste it.
Yeah, you really can.
I mean, you can, like that 10th or shit. this 30th anniversary Connecticut we had, I wrote a review about it, and I'm telling you, from the smell off the foot and from the cut and just a cold draw from it,
yeah,
it smelled and tasted just like a sheet of chocolate chip fucking cookies with a little bit of cinnamon in it.
Yeah,
and I never smelled Connecticut's usually honey, graham cracker, butter, creamy, a little cedar, stuff like that. Just about every Connecticut you smoke has got that pretty consistent flavor profile.
Yeah,
and this was completely different. Completely different. It was really good.
Yeah,
I gave it a 93.
Yes, and for you, that's pretty high. I mean, really, because we kind of conservatively score them. If you're gonna get 95, I better be smoking some bitch down with a toothpick. But I got a feeling that when they came out, we didn't know which of the three were going to be like the star of the show.
Yeah,
because the 10th anniversary, the champagne is the star of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really good, but the Connecticut and the 30th is the best one.
Yeah,
I think so far.
Yeah, so far I'm smoking the sun-grown 30th as well, just to try to give it a.
Oh, are you? Is that what you're?
Yeah, I decided to go ahead with it, and it's all right so far.
Not blown away with it.
I'm not blown away with it. Of course, I'm only maybe a half inch into it, so we'll see how it goes from there. I totally got the wrong drink. I should be having a bourbon with this because it's kind of spicy. The sun-grown wrappers. I think it's a Cuban seed Habano.
Yeah, I think so.
And it's most of the time they've got a little spice, which pairs more better with like a rum or a good bourbon or something like that. But
when I first started, I wanted like a Churchill. I wanted a big fat cigar in my hand and stuff.
Yeah.
But as time went on, I just kind of gravitated toward those little Hoya de Nicaragua, little torpedo.
Those are the best.
They're just for all purpose.
Yeah.
If I was going to say pound for pound, we had one when we went down to Trailhead.
Yeah.
And at first, I was thinking, I don't want that, when I first seen it. But then I just like they got kind of a peppery taste, sort of almost a walnut kind of reminds you of some sort of tree bark or something.
Yeah.
But they've never disappointed me yet.
No, that's the hard thing and I would think as cigar makers or anybody really, I mean, to get the utmost compliment would be consistency, and I'm with you. I got a box of them right up there.
Yeah.
And I love them in that size. I love them in that little short, fat size.
Yeah, me too.
They're great smoke. And
it's funny because I sat down one day. I was going to attempt to do like a cigar video, like a review. I was going to try my hand at it and see what I can do. So I started with one of them. I thought, this will be, I'll pitch this to people. Like, this is my favorite,
Yeah.
And I sat there and when I done it in sections, I was like, I can't sit here for an hour and a half, 2 hours, doing this. So I'll split it into sections. When I got done and went back to edit the video, it was like 35 minutes long. And I was like, no one's going to want to hear me talk about this little cigar for 35 minutes.
Yeah.
So maybe one of these days I'm going to have to go back, try it again and try to whittle it down some, because I was sitting there, I've watched a lot of reviews and stuff, different people, but I'm not going to sit there and listen to anybody talk that long about such a small cigar. But it was that good,
Yeah.
It was worth talking about.
I was like you, when I first started smoking, I wanted the big ring gauge, and I still, in some things, I like that.
Yeah.
And because it really pisses me off when the draw's too tight on the cigar.
Yeah, me too.
That's why I bought that tool, and the just because of the size of it, it's less likely to be a tight draw and a bigger smoke. It just is. But then I just figured out I was smoking the wrong stuff.
Yeah.
Because
in my opinion, I think it's just the opposite.
Oh, do you?
Because they're trying to put so much in it.
Yeah, that's a good way.
They could pack it too tight.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that.
I don't know who's right or who's wrong. It doesn't matter.
Well, I'm sure it varies. It's like we smoke those Reservas in they're Romeos, right?
Which ones?
The Reservas, Reals.
Oh, yeah. The 1875 Real Reservas.
And the Robusto is just the best one.
The little bully.
The bully
in the
version.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of a bellicoso shape, a little pointed on the end.
Yeah, and I bought some Gordos the other day in a box. There's the draw, just like you said, the draw's pretty tight on them, and they're okay. I'm going to smoke them, I'm not going to throw them out like I did those Rockies, but they're not special. And, consistency from a brand standpoint, Perdomo does a hell of a job, so I'm kind of surprised on that one that you had.
I was completely blown away by it. I just didn't have any idea that it would be. They're just too good. I mean, they draw test every cigar. I think they have from start to finish. I think there's I heard him the other day on Cigar Authority podcast, which if you don't listen to, it's really good.
And that episode is great.
Yeah.
He and his son are very knowledgeable for the Perdomos.
But I think it goes through something like 300 something steps. Wow. Before it ever gets to, they put the band on it, or until you get to, before it's box worthy, I guess I should, maybe that's the best way. I don't know. I may be butchering it, but any rate, there's nobody out there draw tests every cigar, and they just do everything in house. But hey, here's the deal. I wasn't so mad about it that I won't ever smoke one again, or I won't ever try one again, because you're still talking about a handmade product.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, you're still talking about 100% guilty as charged. I'm human.
Yeah, when you were getting me into them,
I remember make a mistake.
I remember being, when you were getting me into them, I didn't know nothing about them. And I just, when you started explaining to me how that this is a leaf around it, it's not a piece of paper. You just started explaining how they're all hand rolled and stuff. It was fascinating to me. Wait a minute, there's more to this. I don't remember which one it was. I remember I texted you one day, and I don't remember what brand it was, but I lit this cigar, or tried to, and I tried forever. And I remember I messaged you about it. I was like, why is this cigar? It just was sort of like almost, I can't explain it really. It was almost like it was just mush. And I couldn't get it. I don't remember if you said it had been in the humidor too long or not long enough.
Yeah, I just got it humidified.
I think I had just ordered it. I hadn't had it long. It came in a sampler I got, and every other cigar in that sampler was great. But that one, I don't remember which one it was. But I just remember I was walking around and I was like, why is this thing?
I can't remember. It's been a while ago.
Yeah,
I can't remember either, but I remember you sending that. And that's exactly what it was with this. I've only had that happen twice. I've had that happen. JC bought a box of those Monte Cristo Epic. It was like a 12-year aged. It was one of their, it was supposed to be the next greatest thing.
$15 a stick.
Like more.
Yeah.
These were more. Yeah. These were, I mean, hell, JC liked them. They were high dollar. And a lot of times when they're over humidified, and that's what that Perdomo did the other night was, like your ash, you have a consistent burn and everything. And then a lot of times when you go to tap it or knock your ash off, or if it falls off, which mine does, I got burns on everything I got from where I sat here that ash is supposed, that cherry under there is supposed to be, it's supposed to be even, it's supposed that cherry's supposed to be red all the way around, and maybe even have just a little bit of a cone shape to it, just a little bit of a cone shape when you're smoking. You're not smoking it too fast. It's burning right. Everything's going like it's supposed to.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when they're over humidified, that ash just keeps hanging on and hanging on and hanging on and hanging on. Yeah. And once you finally get rid of it, it's coned.
Yeah.
It's in the shape of a cone underneath all that. And it's over humidified.
This was almost pasty on the end. You know what I mean? It's like I could sit and tap it. It was just sort of like.
Well, it was really humidified.
Yeah. It was. I was sitting, to kind of I could touch it and I was like, what is going on here? And it was just almost like glue nearly.
Wow.
It was. But I can't remember who I got that from, if it was JR's or Cigars International or who. It was one of I think it might have been, I was doing the cigar of the month from JR's for a while, and I've never had any problems. But I think it was just one out of the five that time that just, it happens, I guess.
It does. They're a lot fewer and further between than one would really. Again, if you really look at it and think about every one of those, they say a proficient roller. Just one who's proficient, not their best rollers or the ones that roll certain shapes. Because there's there's some of them they won't let
specialty rollers.
They're specialty rollers that roll, things that are a figurado shape or a bellicoso or a torpedo and things like that, different shapes. But just a proficient roller, and they work in pairs. And just doing wrappers. This is not counting because there's two different sets of rollers. There's buncheros, which do the binders and the fillers. And then there's finishers that just do the wrapper leaves. Mm-hmm. But either one of those groups, and just like, again, and I hate to keep saying it, but just a proficient roller, a pair of them can roll 600 cigars in a day.
Wow.
And if you think about that,
30 boxes.
You're talking about, in baseball, if you go 2 for 4, or 3 for 5, the whole history of your career, you're in the fucking Hall of Fame.
You go 3 for 5, you're batting 600.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? You're Superman.
Yeah. Yeah, you go 3 for 10, you're in the Hall of Fame.
That's
right.
So to think about that and to only get one every so often, and a lot of times it's not even from a construction standpoint. I don't like the one you're talking about. That wasn't from a construction standpoint. That was just from, it wasn't handled right. It wasn't stored right. It was, so
that one showed up.
That's pretty incredible.
You just about have to dip it in water to.
Yeah.
It almost felt like it had been nearly. It was, but.
Well, it could have been. Who knows?
Yeah, it could have got wet. They used to before.
Mailman may have a vendetta against you.
He may have.
People used to have the opposite problem, before these humidification processes where you could, get these packs and these beads and all this stuff. But used to, they dip them in cognac to keep them from being so dry. You can still, some of those guys, these, probably Gurkha, I'm sure they're one that does it, but they will still send some in a tubos in cognac.
Yeah.
Yeah, just as a novelty. I'm sure they're $300. And I've only had that canoeing happen one time in my life. Yeah. And that was on a Gurkha.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to say maybe I've had that happen, but that coning thing, I've had it happen twice. One was on a Monte Cristo Epic, and one was on that 30th Maduro of the Perdomo. But what you been doing? What have you been into lately, other than smoking cigars and living the good life?
Just trying to stay busy. Keep doing my thing. Me and the band's finally got something to work toward, and we're going to be playing Wayne Stock in February.
Oh, that'd be nice.
So that's going to be fun. We'll be there on Saturday night, and we've been together rehearsing and getting ready for that. So that's been a whole lot of fun.
Who all's making up the band these days?
I got Greg Horn playing guitar and pedal steel.
Oh, nice.
John Baker's on the bass, and Brian Stansbury's on the drums.
Okay.
Nice.
Now, I think last count I had about Brian's smoking cigars.
He is. Yeah, he's into them too. He got me into a Southern Drawl, Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah.
I really like. That's one of his favorites. He got me into those, and then I tried one of those
stout cigar.
They are. Then I tried one of those Rosa Sharon's with pink wrapper.
Yeah.
But Brian's a cigar smoker too. We go out from time to time, and it was funny. Was trying to think of somewhere to go in Knoxville to have a cigar. That you could actually have a cigar and stuff. What's funny? I was walking around one time down on Market Square, and I put my cigar out before I went in the press pub. And then I got inside and I was sitting there and I smelled smoke, looked around, seen ashtrays everywhere. I'm like, crap, I put it out for nothing. so I ended up.
A lot of times they'll just let you smoke cigarettes, though.
Yeah.
There's only a few places I can think of that'll let you smoke cigars.
Yeah, I imagine
Surely the pub is,
man, I wouldn't hold my breath.
They never said anything to us that day. We both had one.
Oh, did you relight one?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I did.
All right, well, that's good to know. I didn't know that. I know that.
We were sitting at the bar, so, I mean.
Yeah.
Urban bar in the old city, they'll let you smoke cigars. What is that place? Buckethead out there across from Target in West Knoxville.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Let you smoke there. And that place, Half Barrel on the Strip.
Yeah.
Smoke cigars in there.
And I never realized too, like when I was growing up, my grandmother was funny. My grandmother was a chain smoker. I mean, she smoked one cigarette after another. I would light one off the next one,
Mm-hmm.
If somebody lit up a cigar, back then you could smoke in restaurants. You could smoke at McDonald's when I was a kid,
Yeah.
We'd be sitting there and...
you smoke in the hospital.
Yeah.
Smoke on an airplane.
But she would smell a cigar light up and she'd get madder than hell for some reason if she smelled one. And then years later, like when I got into smoking them, you go back and you smell like a Swisher Sweet or something, just a little paper cigar or one of these little, you smell those and they do smell totally different. Even my mom, like if I don't smoke in the house, I smoke outside, but my mom has actually smelled these when I was smoking them. She's like, well, they don't smell as bad as the ones we used to smell. And I'm like, a lot of times you probably are just somebody's just got a little cheap paper cigar sitting beside you somewhere. But
machine rolled, white owl. What was the others? Havatampas and
I was trying to think of the name. Black and Mild.
And I'm thinking about even like older ones, like back in the when old men used to smoke, and they stunk like hell. I was
El Producto. That was the George Burns cigar.
Oh, was it?
Yep.
That's something too. Once I got into cigars,
did he smoke like 12 a day or some shit?
And once I've got into cigars, I've said to myself, so what was he smoking? What was like Hannibal on the A-Team? What did he have? What did he have? And I've had friends, there was like,
freeze frame stuff.
Friends I grew up with, old guys that I grew up around would smoke them. And now that they've passed on, I'm going, crap, I wish I'd have known what they were smoking. Because there used to be a guy back in Middlesboro named Paul Lee. He was a used car salesman, looked just like Jackie Gleason.
Oh, man.
I mean, a dead-on ringer. If Jackie Gleason needed a stunt double, he would have been his guy.
That guy would have been the guy.
And he always had a big, fat cigar in his hand, and he was just a great dude. One of your typical used car salesman.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he sold it to a T.
Right this way.
Yeah. Little old lady in Florida, throw it to church on Sunday. But he always would come out with one of those in his hand, and he'd just stand over there with his mouth as he's talking to you, and he's a cool dude. Yeah. I got my first, a couple of my first cars off of him, because he was the type that would let he'd come, I mean, he had all clunkers. I mean, he really did. But like he would give you a clunker, like, here you go, take this one. You'd drive it for a little bit, and something messed up on it. He'd be like, well, go give me a couple $100. You can take that one over there and just trade it back in. And I would just do that. It was pretty fun. But I look back at it and go, damn, what was he smoking?
What was your first car?
My first car was a little Dodge Shadow.
Okay.
A little red Dodge Shadow was the first car I ever had.
Yeah. Mine was a 79 Ford Fiesta.
Really?
Yeah, a little hatchback. Looked kind of like an old school, like a Rabbit. Yeah. No power steering.
Yeah.
No AC. Yeah.
He lost me with no AC.
Yeah. Black interior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
I had some wheels.
Yeah. I learned how to drive in a CJ5 Jeep. My dad took me in the woods and taught me how to drive in the mountains. He's like, you can't mess nothing up there. You ain't going to hit nobody. So he took me up in the woods, and I learned how to drive in that, learn on a standard, and drove that little Jeep all over the mountains till I got used to it. And I remember he took me several times, let me do it. And then one day it wasn't far at all from from the blacktop back home.
Yeah.
But I just remember when he was like, okay, he's like, just drive us all the way home. And I was like, you mean I can turn onto the main road? He's like, yeah, just go for it. And I remember being like all paranoid, just going not far at all, just a few feet. That was like the Andy Griffith episode where Barney give the police escort from the hotel to the police department. He just went like right down the road. It was kind of like that, but yeah.
Mom took me to drive to learn, and we would go over to the school over here, over to East Knox, and drive through the parking lot.
Yeah.
Stuff. Of course, never taught me how to park or use a mirror or nothing like that, but I'd drive around circles in the parking lot, stop and go and all that stuff. And then one day, I don't know. I just never was in a big hurry to drive.
Yeah.
I wasn't scared or it was just like but I was just content. If I need to go somewhere, Mom would take me,
Yeah.
No big deal. And my brother finally one day, he said, when are you going to get your license? I was probably nearly 17.
Yeah. I think I was 18. Before I had the permit first.
Yeah.
But I went forever on a permit and then just never got around to get my license.
I did the same thing because we had to at least have a permit to do driver's ed in school.
Yeah.
And so at any rate, he's just like, listen, you got to quit dicking around and get your driver's license. It's time. I was like, okay, fine, whatever, man. And she took me over here to Roseberry Baptist Church to drive one day. She said,
the parking lot.
We'll go around the parking lot and drive through the cemetery.
Okay.
I said, all right, cool, whatever. So we're driving around, and I'm driving through the cemetery, and we had a 76 76 Ford Granada.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I've ever told this story or not, but so I was driving and I was doing fine, and I mean, hell, it's a cemetery. Like you can go 100 mile an hour, right?
Yeah.
And she said, turn up here. And she said it kind of late. Mm. And when I did, I didn't turn it all, I didn't get a good turning radius. And I hit a headstone.
Oh.
And hey, knocked some bitch over.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It didn't bust it?
No, didn't bust it. Thank God. And I can't even remember who it was. Probably some old ladies that haunt me the rest of my life or some shit. But I looked at her and her eyes was big around as mine was. And I thought, oh my God. She said, well, get out there and pick it up. I said, it's a damn headstone. I can't pick that thing up. Yeah. She said, well, you're going to have to. And I thought, oh my God. So, and it wasn't like a single, like, I don't know the best way to describe it, but like, one that was a couple feet wide by, 24 by 36.
This was big.
No, it was a big one.
A family headstone.
Probably had her
mama and daddy.
Yeah, probably had mama and daddy on it. I can't remember. I just know I got out there and in some way, somehow, I reached down and picked that damn thing and stood it back up and walked it onto the pedestal and got it back on there best I could. And she's like, let's get the hell out of here. I said, you got it. I'm gone.
Well, it's funny. I remember when I finally broke down and got my license. Like I said, I was out of school when I finally got them. And to this day, it's one of the closest calls I've ever had in my life. So I get my license, and I'm driving back home. I finally got my license, and I go to turn up the road where I lived. And it was just a little 1-lane road, and my buddy's coming down it. And right as I go to turn in, I didn't see him. He's coming down, and I slam my brakes, and I don't take into consideration somebody was right on my bumper. And so when I hit my brakes, I could see his face. I'm looking at my buddy, and I see his face, and he does this, like puts his hands over his head because he's thinking I'm going to get nailed. Luckily, nobody was coming because it's like a 2-lane road that I was on. Luckily, nobody was coming, and they just whipped it around and laid down on their horn as they went by me. And missed me by like that much. I remember thinking, I was like, I just got my license like today. Like I finally did it. Because I rode I rode all the way to Nashville on a permit. I was 18 right out of school, and I still had my permit. And a buddy of mine, this is a funny story. A buddy of mine, we were just in a little garage band is all we were. We made a cassette. We literally recorded a practice session on a cassette. Mm-hmm. And my buddy was like, let's go to Nashville and just walk into MCA Records and see if we can't get a record deal. And I was like, you're crazy, man. At the time I was like, you're crazy, but I had never been anywhere. I grew up in Millsboro, Kentucky. The farthest north I'd been is Lexington. I'd been to Knoxville. And I think that's it. I mean, that's about the radius of where I'd been. Yeah. And I was like, dude, ain't nobody gonna listen to us. And he's like, well, he said, now think about it, man. He's like, if you want a job, you go put in an application, don't you? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, then why can't we just walk in there? And the only thing that sold it in my head, he's like, you see Nashville? And I was like, yeah, I can see Nashville. He's a couple years older than me. He already had his license.
Yeah.
And he told me, he was like, hey, he said, you drive. And I said, well, I can't drive in Nashville. I've only got a permit. He said, well, I got my license. He said, once we get to Nashville, he said, I'll take over. He said, I've drove in a big city before. Yeah. He was totally bullshitting me this entire time. I don't realize this. So me, him, and another buddy gets in that little Dodge Shadow, and we drive to Nashville. And when we get there and I see it, and the pace has picked up drastically from sleepy little Millsboro. And so I'm sitting like a deer in headlights, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to pull over to this next exit. You can drive from here. And he's like, no, you're doing good, man. You're doing great. And I was like, no, really? I said, dude, I've never done this. I was like, you need to take over. He's like, no. And I could see he was every bit as deer in headlights as me. And all of a sudden I was like, you bullshitted me. He's like, I've never drove in the city. I just wanted to see Nashville. And so now there we are. We're in Nashville. And like a bunch of morons, man, we walked right in. We had people laughing in our face. Looking back at it, it's a hilarious story.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But we walked right in MCA, Capitol Records. Hi, we're from Middlesboro, Kentucky. We want to see if I get one of them record deals. So we're just and this one woman, several people laughed at us. And finally, this one lady just looks at us like we're crazy. She's like, well, that's not really how it works. She's like, and so she's like, let me explain some stuff to you. So she starts kind of breaking it down for us and putting it into perspective. And we're going oh shit. And so we ended up, once we realized that we were not going to get a record deal by walking in and asking for it at 18 years old, we just ended up going around Nashville and seeing the sights. I was like, well, we're already here. We might as well see some things. And run around to some museums and stuff like that. And saw the Strip and had a good time and made it back home. But my buddy never did drive. He never would. He made me do the whole thing. And I had a couple of close calls. And when I got back from that, when I come through Knoxville, and from Knoxville to back home, I ran every red light going home. At this point, I was just so happy to see my part of the world. It was real late at night, probably 1 or 2 in the morning. Sure. I'm just coming through there, and I was like, I looked around, nobody's around. I just cruised on through them. I was like, I'm getting back home. And I didn't go back to Nashville till I was, probably 2014 or 15. Me and Jeff Lane went down there and did some songwriter nights, and that's the first time I've been back. From that point on, I was like, I'm never going back. I made a fool of myself. I was like, I didn't go back for years after that.
Hey, folks, if you're looking for a cool, eclectic place with an outside patio, plenty of UT sports games, cold beer, and live music on the weekends, then look no further than one of our homes away from home, Trailhead Beer Market, located at 1317 Island Home Avenue in South Knoxville, Tennessee. Trailhead is South Knoxville's first beer market, situated on the banks of the Tennessee River and in the backyard of the Urban Wilderness and Iams Nature Center. You can find more info on Facebook and Instagram about specials, live acts, and the goings-on, and be sure to tell them McGill and Jamie sent you, and have one more for the good guys. Man, I mean, you look back on stuff like that and you think about how crazy or how, whatever word it might be right for it, ignorance,
naive,
and everybody. Ignorance was one of those words that you use it and people, because I guess it sounds like it's an ugly word, it's a but the definition is because you don't know any better.
You don't know, yeah.
And but I guess what I'm trying to get at too is, you think about that, and God bless you that you were, in so many ways, because at least you did something.
Yeah.
You learned.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whether it was a hard lesson or if it was that instance or another instance, it was at least you weren't defeated before you ever tried.
Yeah. And what's funny, I come back home and was pretty depressed. But the funny thing is, man, about this is one of those moments where a blind squirrel almost caught a nut. Because what happened was we stopped at this one little place that actually talked with us and kept our cassette. And the dude actually called us like 6 months later. We've already forgot about it. And he calls us and he was like, I really like this one song that's on this cassette you gave me. And he was like, do you mind if I take this around and see if I can't get something out of it? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I never heard back from the guy. But I was sitting there going like, oh my God. And I look back at that moment in time and I go, I'm so glad that didn't happen. Like, I'm so glad I didn't get struck by lightning and just wrote one little dorky song that ended up becoming, you know what I mean? Because you wouldn't have never ended up, I wouldn't have ended up living the life I lived, playing the places I played and doing the stuff I did. So it was one of those moments. But I remember when I came back home, it wasn't long after that, my mom got me this Waylon Jennings VHS tape of like, I can't remember the name of it, but it was like a documentary about him. And there was a spot in the documentary where he talked about how he started. And he was like, when you first start off in the business, he's like, don't come running down to Nashville. He's like, don't come here. He's like, just go somewhere and sit down and make some racket. Make Nashville come to you. He's like, if they come to you, the door will be open. If you try to go to them, the door will always be closed. I was like, well, I wish I might have heard that before I went. But I just kind of kept that in the back of my mind. I was like, I'm going to do that. And what's funny, it ended up really happening to me because years later, Robbie Turner, who played pedal steel with Waylon, reached out to me and had me come record a song in his studio. So I just remember that going, dang, I took his advice just from that tape. And then years later, I got that call.
How wild is that?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
But that it was also somebody that was associated with Waylon.
What was so funny about it, when that happened, what was so funny is that I was living here in Knoxville at the time. And
we hadn't known each other very long.
Pretty much just met. Yeah. And
I remember when it happened.
Yeah, I was over at a buddy, Chris Russell. I was over at his house recording some songs in his attic, and we were just hanging out. Well, there's back home where I'm from in Tazewell, there's the Turner family, and Buster Turner played bluegrass over there for years, and the Turner brothers played at the Sundowner, and they were the house band there forever.
I got Sundowner stories.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear them. But so I'm there, and there's a Bobby Turner back home where I'm from, and several Turners have studios. So I was at Chris's and I just looked down and saw this message from Robbie Turner, and it just said, hey man, love that song you wrote about Waylon. I really think I could do something with it and would love to record it. Give me a call sometime, and left his number. And I just typed back, okay man, no problem. I'm over here at a buddy's house right now. I'll call you when I get home. Thinking it was one of the Turners I grew up with.
Yeah.
So I get back home. I've already forgot about it. And I get back home and I'm sitting there eating and I'm telling my wife the time about it. I was like, one of the Turners from back home. I said, he messaged and wants to record the Waylon tune that I wrote, the song about Waylon that I wrote. And she goes, well, what was his number? And I don't know. When I picked it up, I was like, well, it's like 615, whatever. I named it off. And she's like, well, that's a Nashville number.
Yeah.
And I was like, huh. So then I clicked on his profile picture and went to his page, and it said steel guitarist Waylon Jennings. And I jumped up and ran upstairs as fast as I could go because I had that album Going Down Rockin' that he produced. And I run upstairs and I grabbed it and opened it up, and it said produced by Robbie Turner. And I'm looking at I'm like, holy crap, there's no way in the world. And it was one of those moments, but it ended up being a good time. That's the only time I recorded in Nashville, but people have asked me what it was like. All I can say, it was like watching somebody operate a spaceship. It was over. Everything was so fast. Like everybody came in, and the drummer, one take, he was done and out the door. The guitar player walked in, one take, he was gone.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't there long at all. And Robbie was telling me, he's like, down here in Nashville, he's like, you got these session guys, they'll go around.
Yeah.
And he said, everybody here has got a studio in a basement or a garage somewhere. And he said, these guys just make a living going door to door.
Yeah.
2 and 4.
And it was a good time though.
Yeah. And he had heard that off of something you had put out on like Facebook or something. Yeah,
I put it on social media. I put it on YouTube, and honestly, my buddy Dan Deal, I don't know if you know Dan or not.
Yeah, I know Dan. I haven't seen him or heard.
Yeah, I haven't either.
From Dan in a long time. He's from up around like Tri-Cities, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. He always wishes me a happy birthday because like I was born May 9th of 80. He was born May 8th.
Yeah.
And he always reminds me, I beat you to this planet by one day.
Yeah.
But he shared it on Facebook. I put it up on YouTube, and he shared it on Facebook, and he just so happened to be friends with Robbie, and that's how Robbie saw it.
Well, didn't we do, didn't me and you and Jeff Lane and Dan, and it seemed like there was another guy. You invited me in on it, I think. It was like a rider night down at Open Chord one time. Long time ago.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I think that's right. I think that's where I first met all those guys. Maybe there was a guy named Chris something.
Chris Long, maybe?
Chris Long, yeah. Yep. You know,
it's funny, too. When I first started playing music, I'd hear the older dudes that I was around. They'd be like, I don't know if I played on that or not. I can't remember if I played that, or I can't remember if I played that place or not. And I used to go, well, how can you not remember where you played?
Yeah.
And nowadays, I catch myself doing it all the time. Like people like you. I've had some of my buddies like, that's you playing lead guitar on that song of mine. And I'm like, was it?
Yeah.
Did I do that? Like, okay, cool.
I'm bad about that. I'll hear something that's been recorded or something that, a practice or a rehearsal or something, and somebody will play it back, or it'll be, well, it happened like a month later or something. You go back and listen. So I was going to play this, and I'd hear a guitar lead or something. I'd say, man, that sounds pretty good. Who?
Yeah.
He's like, well, that was you. It's like, oh, well, all right. I sure shit wouldn't remember how to do it now.
I know. There's so many times I've had to go back and learn my own songs, like something I'd record in the studio.
Well, I forget songs, not necessarily as much lyrically or words as I just forget the song.
Yeah. That it exists.
I mean, that's why I carry that iPad around.
Yeah.
More than anything is because I've sang how many songs you sang in 20 years?
Oh, God.
You know what I mean? And it's like, and sometimes you might have something hit you and you hadn't sang it in 20-something years.
Yeah.
And you just remember every word of it.
That's so crazy
just like
how
it
that
was
works.
yesterday. And then you get on one of yours and forget the opening line.
Yeah, I do that a lot.
Yeah.
And, I used to play in a band called the Real-Billies back years ago. We played a lot of dive bars and stuff. And there was just like this certain set list that even though they were covers, I just consider them Real-Billy songs in my head, And you could ask me to play those right now, and they would come back to me, boom, no problem. Ain't sung them in maybe 10 years, but it'd just be like riding a bicycle. And then, like you said, one that I wrote 2 days ago, or something new, or something a year old, I've already forgot it and forgot it exists. But I've had moments too, like on my song Zombie Town, that lead guitar solo in the middle, that's me. And what's funny is I literally just fell into that last lick in that lead where it kind of walks up the neck like down, 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 down. And I'm just hanging on for dear life as I did that and hoping I land on the right note. And I did. And John was like, that's great. That's the take. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I had to go back and learn it. And it took me forever to find it back. I was like, where did I do that at? And to this day, when I go to do that solo and I get to that spot, I have to really stop and think about it. But at that time in the studio, I just did it without thinking,
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. That's like a lot of the Romeo stuff that I've played lead on, or maybe a turnaround or a kickoff or an ending or something. And and I'd hit something. I had the idea of what I wanted to do, and nine times out of 10, I played everything pretty much the same because it was the only electric guitar was so unfamiliar.
Yeah,
it was the only way that I was going to feel confident of trying to memorize, my licks and my voicing and my stuff that I'm going to do. But then I'd hit something, and I'd have to go back and listen to it again.
Yeah.
And then the crazy thing about it would be like, where did I get that from? Like, how did I come up with that?
Yeah. I've stumbled across so much stuff like that playing live with a band too. You just all of a sudden you find something that you probably never would have found sitting around just trying to learn it. If you're just sitting there with the record in front of you, you may have never been able to figure it out. But there's been times I've sort of stumbled onto something at a gig and went, wow, that sounded cool. And the next night try it again and just keep working it till you get it, you know, till you kind of work it into your repertoire.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is just that you've removed yourself. You've got yourself out of the way.
Yeah.
And then the creative stuff can happen, and
I think so.
And things like that, you know.
I think a lot of times you're overthinking it, but if you get in front of a good audience and the band's really sounding good and everything's clicking, you'll take more chances because you're just having a good time with it.
Yeah. Well, you're I seen the other day. I thought I'd seen the other day. You're in the studio again.
Yeah. We just finished up another one. I wrote a whole lot of songs this year. I just started writing about stuff that was going on, just reacting to stuff I seen.
Yeah.
And cranked out like 2 albums this year.
Yeah.
So that was pretty fun. And it's some of the most fun I've had in the studio in a while because they were just so new and fresh in our mind. I'd come into the studio and I just wrote it the day before and I'd send them a video and like, hey, here it's going to be. And so a lot of what you hear is just the first or second take in the studio. I told the band, I was like, just picture country music with more of a punk rock attitude, just like plow through it, just go through it, get it over with quick. And some of the songs were like a minute and a half long. I think I got one song like almost a minute long. And I don't know why I just like that. There's a lot of fun in just writing songs that are short to the point, just get in and get out. And I don't know what it's been a lot of fun doing that. But I remember years ago,
well, they may set up another song or resolve another one.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe. I don't know.
I remember one of my big heroes was J.J. Cale, and I loved how his songs was like 2 minutes long or a minute and a half or something. And he said one time in an interview that a lot of his stuff he wrote it as demos. He meant for someone else to record it. It wasn't really even meant for him, And I don't know, as times went on, I remember earlier, like when I was writing songs, I try to write them longer and find solo sections to do and make them more, but anymore here lately, I don't know. I just kind of enjoy just seeing almost like a challenge to see if I could make it shorter than the last one. Just get it in there and get it over with.
So do you worry about it or have any thoughts about, a new song being any different than an old song or sounding alike or not sounding alike?
I quit doing that a long time ago. Yeah. I used to worry about that a lot. And then over time, again, going back to the J.J. Cale influence, I heard him say one time, he said that his critics would say that you could take any of his songs off any of his albums. If he shuffled his albums, they'd still fit,
Yeah.
And he said, but I always thought that meant I had a style, so it's kind of like, I just kind of, and there's times I've actually written one and then said to myself, wait a minute, ain't this the same one I wrote? It's very close, but I kind of, like you said earlier, I just kind of learned to get out of my own way and just do it. And
I think that's the only way.
If they kind of sound the same,
I think that's the only way you can do it, I guess, if because you're turning out stuff all the time.
Yeah. I did one thing with John Baker. It was a pretty interesting project that he got me on board with probably back around the time I did Dark Side of the Mountain back in 2016. He's got a buddy that's
still my favorite.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. He's got a buddy where, that's a school teacher. What the teacher does is he tells the students, write a poem. And they'll write a poem, and then he brings them to John Baker, and John gets like Knoxville musicians to just put music behind these poems.
I think. Okay.
And the rule is John's like, because sometimes he would have 60 or 70 songs to do.
Yeah.
And he's like, the rule is, don't think about it. Don't change none of the words. Just take these words and set them to music and don't think about it. And I remember at first how crazy that sounded to me. And I was like, okay, I can't. Because, as a songwriter, like if me and you was working on something, I'd hand you some words and you may say, well, I'm going to move this around or tweak this a little bit. But in this world, it's like, you can't do that. You just got to, he said, you have to stay true to what's wrote on that paper. So I did that and I really enjoyed it. I actually ended up, one of the songs I did, I really ended up liking and covering it later in my shows. But, that process and that exercise kind of got me in the mindset to do the kind of social commentary kind of songs where you just say to yourself, okay, I've just got a minute and a half or 2 minutes here to say something. Just don't think about it. Just as quick as it can come out, just make it happen and move on. And
yeah.
I think that little songwriting exercise, it ended up having an impact on the way I wrote later. At the time, I thought it was kind of crazy, but
I mean, I could see that because, again, I don't think I've not had any real big desire to sit down and actually, I guess I don't know. I don't know the best way to describe it. It's not that I know it's not that the fact that I can't do it or that I don't have a little something to say.
Yeah.
But I just haven't, I don't know. I just haven't sat down. I got lots of melodies. I got lots of unfinished stuff. I got lots of stuff that are in between. Got some that's all penned out, but I have no music to it. It's more of a literary piece versus, if that makes any sense. But hadn't even thought about putting music to it.
Yeah, I think, and we've talked about this off the air before about you specifically, and because we were talking to somebody the other day about processes and whatever. One thing I like about your approach is that, just like you were saying, is I'm a writer too. I write stuff, and sometimes I don't have shit I want to say, like you said. I say it anyway.
Yeah.
Just as an exercise to keep me from getting stopped up.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And it's like you've become, every time I turn around, you're recording something. It's like I told Mike, it's like, man, he's getting to be prolific with this stuff.
Yeah.
And something to be said for that because, I think we spend a lot of time, just like you said, well, hell, this has got to rhyme and this right here's got to resolve and I need a bridge right here.
Yeah.
Do you really?
Yeah.
No, you don't. And what you do is just like we talked about with this podcast. We talked about it for 6 months before we started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And finally we were just like, hell, let's just do it, man.
Yeah.
Start it. Just start.
And just figure it out.
It will find its own thing, as you go. And that's something to be respected. You're one of the few people I know.
I appreciate
maybe
that.
the only person I know personally that does that. I mean, you really turn out a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And, it's pretty brave, really, because, not everything's going to be a hit.
Yeah.
Not everything's going to be, something everybody's humming all the time.
Exactly.
But who gives a damn?
Yeah. That's kind of how I look at it. And I think, music to me and songs and songwriting, they're just a snapshot in time, and you just go ahead and take that snapshot and you might look back at it. It might be a great one or it might not be, whatever.
That's a good analogy. That's good.
You're just capturing a moment in time.
Yeah. Yeah, and do you want to be somebody that lives in the moment or lives for the moment or wants to capture a moment?
Yeah.
So are you one that, the great example for that of what I'm trying to explain is, we played down in Macon, Georgia one time and came back through Atlanta, and I had heard a bunch of stuff about the Georgia Aquarium at the time. It was still pretty new. Yeah, it wasn't brand new or anything like that, but it hadn't been around too awful long. There was still a big buzz about it and everything, and how nice it was. And I asked the boys. I said, we got a little time to kill. I said, you guys want to stop at the aquarium? Yeah, let's do that. That sounds fun. So we did, and we went in, and it was amazing. But I remembered everywhere we went, people were taking pictures of everything.
Yeah.
Instead of just going up to this, there's a goddamn whale shark just swam over your head. A fucking whale shark.
Yeah.
It's the size of a goddamn school bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all you can think about is taking a picture.
Yeah.
So it's that, are you living in the moment for the moment, or are you trying to capture that moment?
Yeah.
You know, and I think a lot of times these days we're just all, not all of us, but a large percentage of the people out there are caught up in trying to capture it.
Yeah. That's
and
funny
it's
too.
Like, you know, I think I'd rather live for it.
Yeah.
Or live in it.
A lot of times I'll go somewhere and do something really cool and come home and I didn't take any pictures. And it's because I was so caught up just enjoying what I seen. And then somebody say, where's the pictures at? I'm like, crap, I didn't take any. That was like a really cool thing that I seen or witnessed, but I just was enjoying the moment. And, you know, back in all the days of playing in the dive bars, there's so much that I didn't take pictures of. Because at that point I was thinking, why would I? You know, why would I ever want to? And then you look back one day and, like, for example, up in Tazewell, I used to play at a bar called the Mustang Lounge forever. And it's a pawn shop now.
Yeah.
And if you go in there now, they've completely demolished what used to be the Mustang. And so now it's just one big open room as the pawn shop. So you walk in there, I walked around with my son and I'm trying to explain to him, now this used to be a hallway, went this way. And, you know, and he's looking at it going, huh? And I'm like, I didn't take pictures back then. Really, there's some pictures and videos of us playing in there, but I'm saying I really didn't capture a lot of that because I just thought it'd be there forever. But you said you had some Sundowner stories, so
I didn't take any pictures. Yeah. But back then, you know, to your point, you know, pictures weren't as handily available to take at that time.
That's true too.
You had to have a camera.
Yeah, a real one, you know, with film.
Yeah. Now you have to have a phone.
Yeah.
And I played in a band called In Cahoots back in the early 90s. And I guess it was called the Sundowner then too. But we went there 3 or 4 times. But one time in particular, they had just had a murder there.
Yeah.
Like a double murder with a stabbing or something. And the manager came out to us and was explaining, hey, you know, the crowd's rowdy. It could be rowdy. Don't get involved with the crowd. You could get stabbed in the parking lot. Okay. Well, if I recall correctly, they had a stage that was high.
It was, yeah. The drum riser especially.
Yeah. And of course, back then, you know, you had to drink a lot or kill yourself. That was your options because it was not... Playing then is not like playing now. I'll just tell you that, especially around here. So, but I fell off the damn stage mid-song, and nobody knew it but me. I fell completely backwards and hit the ground and was drunk enough where I didn't really hurt myself and got up and continued playing.
Nobody even knew.
Nobody knew. Our drummer was blind, so he didn't know. We had to make sure he didn't kill himself because he was
playing piano or bass?
Piano.
Yeah, so he fell off the seat.
Yeah, backwards. Yeah, and but we played there 2 or 3 times. It was a pretty rough joint. It wasn't the roughest place they ever played. The roughest place they ever played was Jackie's on Clinton Highway.
Yeah,
and the bikers would drive their bikes into the bar.
Wow!
Holy shit!
They had a toilet out in the open there.
Wow.
Yeah. It was serious. And they loved us. A lot of people, they would have, I think they had a cage they'd put in front of some people. They didn't have to do that with us because they knew our lead singer and apparently it was okay. But, you know, for 17, 18-year-old kid, 16, 17, it was pretty.
Oh, God, yeah. I walked in this place over in South Carolina one time and we were, the place was called Macedonia, South Carolina.
I know where that's at.
And we had gotten lost. I couldn't figure out where the hell we were, how to get back where we were wanting to go, you know. And I pulled into this parking lot and walked inside, and it was a club, beer joint, you know, whatever you want to call it. This big old fat man, you know, working behind the bar. And I said, hey, we're trying to get back to so-and-so. And I said, any chance you could help me, you know, give me some directions or help me out? Yeah, son, what you do is, you know, and he was telling me where to go and how to get there and everything. And I just was kind of looking around, you know, while he was talking to me and everything. And they had 6 pool tables, you know, pretty much in the middle of the, you know, not the seating area, but sort of in the middle of the building. And there was a chain link fence from the floor to the ceiling around those fucking pool tables.
Wow.
And I was just thinking, what the hell is this? Dusty Rhodes going to come running out of here sometime or some shit? I will see Magnum TA and the Horsemen, or what the hell is going on, you know? And then I did notice too that where the band played, there was a, you know, chicken wire up across the front of it. And I was just like, holy shit.
I've played in several places like that.
Yeah.
I never got to play behind chicken wire. That's the one thing I was.
No, I haven't either.
I had a cousin that did, but I never.
Yeah.
I needed it a time or two. There's a couple times I needed it, but
yeah,
it's funny because back in the day we would remember people by like who they looked like. We used to play at this VFW. There was a guy like you said, Dick Murdoch, made me think of it as a dude looked just like Dick Murdoch. He stood at the end of the bar at this VFW. So we'd go around these different places and we'd be like, yeah, that's the bar that's got the guy that looks like, you know, Jake from the Blues Brothers or whatever, you know, just whatever. And so one night there was this guy got mad over something. I can't remember what it was. I think he requested a song and we didn't know it. And he's just one of those belligerent dudes got mad, you know, because he said it was one of those classic cases of, well, now if you can play that, you could play this, and you're going, I don't know that, you know. It's like if I don't know it, I can't play it. But they think if you can play one song, you can play them all. And he was kind of mad. And I walked up to the bass player of the band. I was like, dude, there's this guy in here who's kind of pissed off at us at the moment because we didn't know that song. He's like, what's he look like? I said, well, he kind of looks like Terry Bam Bam Gordy. He said, dude, that don't help. Most of our audience looks like Terry Bam Bam Gordy. So it was like, so yeah.
Which for folks listening, Terry Bam Bam Gordy was a big motherfucker and a tough guy.
Yeah, I knew we would hit on wrestling eventually, but I sent you a reel of. I think I sent it to you, didn't I? Stan Hansen going off in Japan.
Yeah,
where
don't potato me.
Yeah, they potatoed him over there. And what's funny about that is Terry Bam Bam Gordy is just sort of walking around kind of trying to direct traffic. Yeah. You can see he's like trying to calm Stan down.
He looks worried.
He looks worried. He's like he's trying to figure out what's going on.
And just real quick, so potato in wrestling, in professional wrestling terms, means you've actually hit the guy and you've hurt him. And, you know, it's a no-no. So another thing you'll hear in those is like that. So the guy that's just got potatoed is going to send a receipt. There's something coming back to you because you deserve it. So go ahead.
Yeah. So these I can't remember the names. Those Japanese wrestlers, they potatoed him pretty good. They kicked him right in the face. It was you could see it that it landed pretty good.
And it was one from the front and the back.
Yeah, like that. Somebody hit him from the front and the back at the same time, and he just went off. And like the whole crowd of Japanese people are like trying to run from him. Once he got out in the crowd, he's slinging chairs, he's slinging stuff.
Damn maniac! 6'6".
It's like just like part in the Red Sea. They're just like going trying to get away from him. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, Hansen was probably 6'6", 6'7", 280.
Yeah, and he was blind without they said he was almost blind without his glasses. So
pretty much legally.
That lariat he did, they never knew.
Yeah,
he might just lay it in too hard himself. I mean, you know.
Yeah, and in Japanese culture, in the professional wrestling world over there, the Americans were called gaijins.
Yeah,
and you had to upon your first visit to Japan, the young boys who were Japanese wrestlers that were just coming up, so basically like enhancement talent here. They were the cannon fodders. They were the guys that got beat up all the time, you know, or got people over. And as they were coming up, they were rough. They would lay it in and make it count. And they would not give you any respect unless you brought it. So they were ready for a fight because whether you were ready for one or not, they were bringing a fight to you, a real fight. You know, for the most part on a lot of stuff, but yeah. So when Americans like Stan Hansen and Bruiser Brody and guys like that had this massive size, and Bam Bam Gordy, they went over there, and I mean, they cleared house.
Yeah.
But that was crazy. If you want to see what we're talking about, it's called You Don't Potato Stan Hansen.
Yeah,
it's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube. It's great. Yeah, they became like legends over there too. There's also something on YouTube that's pretty cool. When Terry Gordy died, they did like a memorial for him.
Yeah.
In the Tokyo Egg Dome, and it was like full, and they like played the song Freebird, and all the wrestlers came out and stood around the ring. They had a big wreath in the middle of the ring, and he was a guy, he made his mark over here and stuff, and then went over there and spent the rest of his life, but become like a legend in that part of the world.
Well, guys like Brody and Hansen, and what's the guy, Bill? I'm having trouble. Having trouble with his real name, but he was in Demolition.
The Mass
Superstar, Bill Eadie. Yeah. They made a living over there.
Yeah.
And Bill Eadie's got a good on Dutch right now.
Yeah, he does.
With Dutch. There's or James, whoever the wrestling shoots. But the same guy that produces the Story Time with Dutch Mantel.
Yeah. I've been watching some of those clips.
English
really
guy
good.
named James. But he was just talking about, and evidently, like, out of all those old guys like that, and you don't hear a lot, but like, I was listening to Kevin Nash one time, and he was just talking about how much respect he had for Bill Eadie.
Yeah.
And certain guys that were completely over, but weren't like, the Hulk Hogans or the Ultimate Warriors, and
there was a time,
the big.
There was a time that certain people was over as big as Hulk Hogan in their territory.
Yeah.
Like Tommy Wildfire Rich was like the biggest baby face in the country at one point. But I got a funny wrestling story, because that's actually what I wanted to be when I was a kid. I never wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a wrestler. That was my whole plan.
Yeah.
And so they started having wrestling at the bingo hall in Middlesboro called the Red Man's Lodge, and the roof was so low in there that you really couldn't. Nobody could come off top rope much. You know, if somebody got up there, they kind of had to jump down. They couldn't get up too much elevation. So I'm totally ignorant about wrestling. I know it's a work. I know that much. I know that it's not necessarily a real fight, but I don't know all the terminology yet. And I don't know how to go about getting into it. Mm-hmm. But I had a cousin who was refereeing, and I got it in my mind that if I went down there and I got on the front row and was loud enough and just was belligerent and like booed the good guys, that maybe they'd recognize me, So I go down there every week.
Just trying to get some heat.
Yeah, I was trying to get some heat. And I just start booing the hell out of every baby face that comes out. And I'm cheering the bad guys. There's this old man sitting there, and he was a regular, and I'm making him mad.
Yeah.
And he's like, don't you realize he's the good guy? I was like, yeah, he sucks. He's terrible. And I'm just trying to be loud and obnoxious and trying to get their attention,
Oh, God.
So it keeps going, and I keep making a fool of myself, basically. I don't realize that I am, but I'm just having a good time. Mm-hmm. So finally I said to my cousin, I was like, man, is there any way you could get me backstage? I want to talk to somebody and see how I could go about getting into this. And so he does. And I got backstage, and while I was there during that time, I got to meet some pretty cool people. I got to meet Buddy Landale. That was really cool. I got to meet Jimmy Golden, Tracy Smothers, a couple people like that passed through, And
I got a good Jimmy Golden story.
I was really excited. So finally, this guy says to me, I'll tell you what, he said, if you'll come down here next Saturday at noon, he said, we'll just work with you all day and just see what you got. And I was like, oh, I'm like 16 at the time. And I lied and told him I was 18.
Yeah.
I think he knew I was lying, but I don't think he cared.
Yeah.
And so I go down there, and I'm all excited. And I've been practicing these moves on a trampoline with my friends. And so I'm thinking, yeah, I could do all this shit. And I get in there, and he's like, now the first thing you got to do is learn how to fall, and you got to take a bump. And he shows me how to take a flat bump. And I walk up there with all the confidence in the world. And when I fell backwards, man, every ounce of air I had just went out of me. It wasn't the trampoline. And I'm like, oh God, I get up and I'm humbled. I'm standing there going, I want to go home. You know what I mean? Really, in all truth. But I was like, now I've got to act tough and look tough, and okay, I can do this. For the next 6 hours, man, they beat the brakes off me. They just laid into me and had fun with me and used me for a punching bag. And I could barely walk. I mean, but the whole next week at school, it was a challenge to get in and out of my desk. But the guy says to me,
"You were 16."
Yeah,
I mean, you know,
And the guy
grown ass men.
Yeah, and the guy says to me, he goes, "He says, you want to be in a dark match?" And I said, "What's a dark match?" He said, "We're about to open the doors." He said, "But if you want to," he said, "we'll have a tag match." And he said, "You and these guys can have a tag match while they're coming through the door." And I was like, "Wow, this is going to be cool." Okay. Well, but nobody had told me yet really how to go about like the whole working angle. Nobody had said don't take liberties. Nobody told me nothing, you know.
Yeah.
That part of it they hadn't told me. Nobody told me how to do a working punch or nothing. It was just all bumping and bouncing off the ropes. So it was me and a buddy of mine that went down there, and he's over here about ready to cry. He's just dying to go home. He's like, "What'd you get me into?" You know?
We got a match.
Yeah. And I was like, "We got a match." So that old guy that's been mad at me this whole time, he comes in, he's sitting on the front row. He's already there waiting, and he's looking up at me, and I'm in the ring. And I know he's thinking, "What's that little punk doing in the ring?" You know? So it's me and my buddy against, there's a black guy named Kid Lightning who was actually really good. He could do all the high flying moves and jump out of the ring. He was really kind of like Kofi Kingston is today, you know, just really could do all the athletic stuff off the ropes and out of the ring. And it was him and a guy named Paul, the Giant Hillbilly. And this dude was like 6'8", about 300, 400 pounds. I mean, he was a brute.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't tell me what to do. So these two wrestlers comes out of the dressing room to have a dark match with these two kids. And no one has smartened us up about nothing, and I don't know no better.
Oh, no.
I'm standing there, and my buddy's in the ring. My buddy's in the ring with him, and they're telling him what to do, and he's doing it, and he tags me. And I'm thinking, nobody told me that I'm not supposed to go first. Like, nobody told me do what they tell you. So I just stepped through the ropes and I just walked up to this hillbilly and I just drawed back and open hand slapped him right in the face. I was thinking, I was like, I'm going to get heat, and I just go pow. And when I did, he looked down at me like, what is wrong with you? And he grabbed me and pushed me in the corner. He goes, lighten up, kid. And he just starts laying these forearms into my chest, knocking every bit of the wind out of me. And I'm like, oh, he's like, you do what I tell you. And I was like, oh, crap.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So now I'm listening to him. He proceeds to beat the crap out of me. And, he at one point he gets me down in like a rear chin, like I'm sitting on my butt and he's got his knee in my neck and he's got like this, and he had long hair, so he leans down. He's like, and he's got this like real soft voice for a big guy. He's like, when I pick you up, I'm gonna send you in the ropes and you duck my clothesline and come back and I'm gonna he said, give me a cross body block and I'll give you a power slam. And I was like, okay. And so he gets me up and he shoots me off and I duck the clothesline and I hit the ropes and I come back. And when I give him the crossbody, I'm thinking I'm just going to keep going with it. But instead, he kind of catches me just for a brief second. Yeah. And straight down we both go. And when I hit that ring with his weight coming with me, I thought my hip broke. And I was like, oh. And I was like, there's no getting up. And he's like, okay. So he reaches and starts pulling me up. And I'm like, oh, crap. And he gets me in a choke slam. And I've not took one. And he brings me up and palms my ass like this. And I'm up there. And now that roof's low. And I'm looking right at the fluorescent lights. Yeah. And I'm going like, oh, God. And down I come. Every bit of wind again leaves. I'm choking. I can't breathe. And he ain't done. He's still mad over that slap. Yeah. He's not done at all. And he leans down and he goes, can you take a power bomb? And I'm going, like, I don't want to say no, but I sure don't want to say yeah. And I was like, I guess. And so he brings me up and he sets me up and I can tell that he's probably giving some kind of big signal and the crowd's roaring. What's there now? They're clapping and shit. He brings me up for that power bomb, and if you've ever saw the clip where Sid Vicious power bombed Brian Pillman in that War Games match where his feet hit the cage and he just folded up like an accordion. Yeah. Even though I was 16 years old, I was probably 6 foot. And he's 6'8", and so when he brought me up for that thing, my feet hit one of those lights and broke it.
Oh man!
And I just come down neck, shoulders, and head like an accordion, just boom. And I remember thinking, "You better pin me because I can't get up. I can't move." So he just drops down and pins me. And actually, as he's pinning me, the ref hits 3, and he's like, you okay? And I was like, yeah. And I'm laying there, and my buddy's on the ropes just looking down at me like, poor you,
My spleen is laying out there in that big gulp cup of that old man with no teeth. I'm fine.
Yeah, and I can't move. And he looks down at me, he's like, roll out of the ring. Roll out. He's wanting to celebrate, like, get out of here. So I roll out, and when I landed on the floor, I couldn't land on my feet. I just had to lay there for a minute. When I landed on the floor, that old man that had been sitting there mad at me, he's right there in front of him, and he looks down at me and he goes, that's what you get, you little old bastard. And I was like, I was so proud of myself. I was like, had this moment.
I got over.
I got heat, you know, and went back to school. And it was a talk of school for a while. The few people that seen it was like,
for sure.
He's a wrestler. But it took me, man, like getting in and out of my desk for a week was a challenge. And to this day, when someone says that shit's fake, I'm like, wait a minute, hold on, wait a second. Let me tell you, that hurt.
Yeah, hell yeah, that hurts.
And they're doing it so many, into their 50s and older. No wonder they're so damn crippled.
No, I know.
You know? God almighty.
Well, I never got to work, but I went over to Jeff Barbara had told me about a wrestling match one night, and he said, "Yeah, they're having wrestling at Green Acres, and they're doing one over here at the Armory, at the Maryville Armory. We ought to go." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a big wrestling fan." He had never really. First of all, he had never been to a match. He's probably remembered WWF stuff as a kid, but never, watched, NWA or, none of the stuff the type of stuff we grew up on.
Yeah.
And I had been to several matches in the past, and he's like, "Yeah, he said, at that time, Metro Pulse was doing a big, like a 10 or 12 page write-up on wrestling, and it actually had wrestling. It was wrote RASSLIN on the cover when it came out. And this was when Johnny Wright was working at the Metro Pulse. And him and Jeff were buddies or whatever. And he was like, "Well, you guys need to take he said, why don't you guys take a camera and pose as photographers for the Metro Pulse and try to get some backstage stuff and get some shots and different things of, the matches and whatnot." I was like, "Okay, well, yeah, we can do that." So, we loaded up and get down there and got a toolbox full of beer in the back of the truck, and the whole thing, and our little digital camera or whatever. We'll go in there, and of course, I'm in wrestling mode and selling mode.
Yeah, and
I've convinced everybody there that I'm somebody. And just walk in there like I own the joint. I'm under the ropes taking pictures.
And this is at Green Acres?
No, this was at the Armory.
Oh, Armory, okay.
Over next to the shed.
Yeah.
Sits across the road from the shed.
Okay.
And I'm taking pictures and everything else and backstage and hanging out with the guys. And, at that time, I was probably 5'10". I was a solid 210, 215, and always had big shoulders and, put together pretty well. But I wasn't no bodybuilder or anything like that, for God's sakes. But at any rate, Jimmy Golden was there that night.
Yeah.
And hell, Jimmy's 6'6", 6'4", long, lean, wiry, a big guy. But he looks like one of them big guys off of like a roofing crew, and or pick up 3 cinder blocks at a time, one of them kind of guys in each hand. And so we get to talking and everything, and then I've got them cutting up and laughing and everything, and I asked Jimmy Golden, I said, like, we need to get an action shot of us backstage with you, somehow or another. And I was like, throw that big left hand, Yeah. And I said, my buddy will get the picture of it. And he goes, I don't think we would need to do that. He's like, you don't put me in a headlock? I was like, yeah, that'll work. So, here I am up trying to get my arms up high enough to get him around the damn neck. But at any rate, get him in the headlock, and I got my picture made, and it's in the Metro Pulse, with Jimmy Golden in a headlock. But at the end of that night, all those guys, and Jimmy too, was like, he's like, God damn, son, you'd be a hell of a baby face. Because I was clean, short hair, and they were just like, you need to come back. We need to make you a baby face. You could get over. You got it. You could get over. And I was like, I don't know, guys. I think and I was like, I'll be back. Of course, I never went back. I never had the balls to go back. But
it's pretty funny. After that happened, they was like, well, if you'll give us if you'll come up with I think it was $1,000, or I can't remember what it was. If you'll come up with that, we'll train you to wrestle. And I would go back, and they'd let me hang out in the dressing room. I think the guy felt sorry for me after all that, and he would let me hang out in the dressing room. That's when I got to meet Jimmy Golden, Buddy Landell, and people. But I did get to carry on one conversation with Jimmy Golden, which was really cool.
Nice guy.
Yeah, super nice dude. And I was telling him how I wanted to be a wrestler and everything. And so he just starts talking to me, and he's like, so, well, you want to be a heel or a baby face? And I was like, I want to be a heel. He's like, well, everybody does. He's like, learn how to be a baby face first, because it's harder. And at the time, I didn't really understand the psychology behind how it actually is. But he's like, well, what would you want your finishing move to be? And I was like, well, there's a move I seen Conan do where he gets people up like in a razor's edge and throws them up into a power bomb and sits down, and it looked pretty cool. He said, that's a cool move. He said, he kind of looked me up and down. And he goes, you think you could get Big Van Vader up in that? And I was like, I doubt it. Like that. And he's like, pick a move you can do to anybody. So that's why I use the drop kick. Back in his day, the drop kick was his finisher. He could hit on anybody. Yeah. He said DDT, diamond cutter, something like that. He said, you can do that to anybody. He said, don't pick something that you're going to, he said, you want to be able to do it too when you get older. He's like, so don't pick something that you're going to have a hard time doing. But it's fun. I got to hang out with a lot of them. And around that time, I was trying to figure out how to come up with $1,000 to have them train me. And my dad, we was big into coon hunting where I'm from. My dad's family was big into it. My grandpas and uncles and stuff. And so we raised Walker coon hounds. And I had one since it was a pup. But I hadn't been hunting with my dad and the family in a while. And so Dad walks in the room one day and he's like, I think I'm going to sell that one Walker of yours. He said, because you don't really go hunting much anymore. And he said, it wasn't his favorite dog we had. And the only reason he was keeping it was because of me. Sure. So he was like, I'm going to sell this one. And I was like, well, so in my mind, I'm going, wait a minute, I need money for this wrestling, Yeah. And I said, well, how much are you going to sell him for? He said, I'll probably get about $250 or $300 out of him. I was like, well, then give it to me. He's like, I'm not giving you money for a dog that I gave you, that I've paid to feed and everything. He's like, you don't even go hunting anymore. What's wrong with you? And so we kind of argued about it for a minute, and he left the room. And a few minutes later, he come walking back in with this Sigma Martin guitar that he had got at Broadway Sound. Oh, yeah. And it had been in his closet for a couple of years, and he hadn't really played it. And he was like, I was sitting there thinking about it. He said, I did give $250 for his guitar at Broadway Sound. And he said, I don't ever use it. He said, and you don't go hunting anymore. He said, so how about we just swap this dog for that guitar? And I was like, I don't really want to play guitar. And I'm also thinking, I don't want to be a honky-tonk man in wrestling. My mind was all about wrestling, so I'm going, I don't really want to use that for my gimmick. So I was just like, no, I don't think I do. But also at that time, I'd been writing poems, and I don't even know why. I just started writing poems in my notebook, and I had them in my notebook and was kind of embarrassed about showing them to people because it's kind of like these love poems and stuff. Yeah. And so Dad was like, well, he said, you might could learn to play it. It might be fun. He said, who knows? You might even write your own songs on it or something. And when he said that, I thought, well, wait a minute. Those poems I got in my notebook, they could be songs, and I'd be a songwriter. And I was like, well, okay, let's swap. And he gave me that guitar, and he gave me a Mel Bay chord book, just to go with it. Oh, yeah. And the first two songs I learned how to strum, he showed me how to do it, but he's like, just strum these. Was like Anybody Going to San Antonio by Charlie Pride and Tiger by the Tail by Buck Owens. Yeah. And I would just sit and strum those two songs, over and over. And man, I just totally forgot about wrestling. Once I started playing that guitar and then I was looking at my notebook at the songs, and then it was like, okay, I know 3 chords now. What other Buck Owens song can I learn, or what other Waylon or Hank or whatever? A lot of them. And so all of a sudden I just completely forgot about even wanting to do wrestling. Now I was hooked on guitar. And that was that turning point. And I've got a picture of that dog on my refrigerator. That dog that it was like that dog kind of started it all. Yeah.
What was his name?
I named him Drum.
Drum?
Drum. And I don't, just like a bass drum.
Oh, drum. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know why I named him that, but.
Wow.
Yeah.
Even named after a musical instrument.
Yeah, it's kind of wild.
I had forgotten that Sigma was a Martin guitar.
Yeah.
I don't think they make them anymore, do they?
I don't think they do.
I don't think so.
I forgot. They were like the, Epiphone of Gibson.
Yeah, Epiphone of Gibson or like a Squire of a Fender. Yeah. But I've still got it. It still plays good. I had Steve Novelli here in Knoxville work on it and set it up for me not too long ago. And it actually still plays. It sounds really good. I've used it for recording at times, just in the studio mic'd up, and it's a good sounding guitar. And I just never have parted ways with it for sentimental reasons.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one I learned how to do it on.
It's funny you mentioned his name too. Phil Fuson is a big Novelli fan. Guess he works on all of Phil's stuff.
Yeah, he does good work. He really does. That's just who I take mine to anymore. I was going to take some to him the other day, but he's sick with COVID, so I'm hoping he.
Oh, no kidding!
Yeah, hoping he gets well pretty quick. But
no kidding.
He's a really good dude, and every time he's ever give me back one of my guitars, it plays like a new one when he gets done with it. He's good at what he does.
Very good. Yeah, I hope he comes out of that.
Yeah,
sure.
Me too.
Several people got it right now. One of my doctors has got it and canceled my appointment. So
really?
It's coming back a little.
There's a lot of stuff been going around where I'm from, and everybody in my family has had some sort of crud that I ain't been to the doctor, but my dad has and my kids have, and every time they go, the doctor's like, well, this ain't contagious. It's just some sort of respiratory infection. And, I mean, it might not be contagious, but we've all it's made the rounds and got us all at some point. But
yeah.
I've been lucky, fortunate, blessed, whatever you want to say. I've had a couple of incidents where I was close and didn't get anything, but I've also been taking and doing multiple vitamins and trying to keep my immune system strong and still, but grandkids have got something now. Hell, one of them squirting from one end and the other, and I just
kids stay sick.
Well, I just told my mom the other day, I was like, I ain't coming around. I got, with all the Christmas stuff coming up and everything, I was just like, I can't. There's no way.
No.
I tend to always, it's always like you can almost set the clock that I'm going to be sick about the second week of January. I don't know what it is with me, but every January, right after I get to the holidays and New Year's, I go down for about a week. Knock on wood. I hope it don't happen this year.
Yeah,
but I don't know. It's almost like I've almost just started to go, okay, you better brace for it. Here it comes. Yeah. I don't know why.
Who knows, man? It's crazy. All the stuff going on. The world, it's just, I look around and I'm just like, okay, I don't know, but hopefully we don't have a bunch of that coming back around and people stay healthy. And
somebody had COVID last year during the show, didn't he?
Nate tested positive the day or
right after
the day or the second day after.
Yeah.
And then Jessica Watson had a roommate the first year we came back. The year you were there, the first year back at first year at the BSU, and her roommate had it, and she didn't know, and she had been, but I guess there's something about a 24-hour period of when somebody first gets it, and then if you're around them in that 24, there's a good chance that you don't, and somehow or another it just all worked out, and
that's good
that it didn't happen.
I had that shit twice.
I've had it twice too.
Yeah.
What's funny, our buddy Brian Stansbury, drummer, he still hasn't ever caught it.
Yeah.
Knock on wood, he's never had it. It's like he might be the only person I know that has it.
I haven't had it.
You haven't had it either? Mm-hmm. Wow. I didn't know that.
No.
I had it twice. The first time I did, the first time I had it, it just I lost my taste and smell and was really tired. It just felt like I had ran real fast and was out of breath, And
I remember talking to you when
it kind of messed with my sense of smell and taste, and still has. Like to this day, I've never really certain foods I used to really like, I don't like anymore, and vice versa. It seems like it's kind of changed things up. And then a couple of years, like maybe last year or a year before, I think it was 22 was when it happened, like early 22, when I was working at the garage door place here in town.
Yeah.
I came down with something, man. I've never been that sick in my life. I thought for sure I was dying. I was literally almost to the point of starting to maybe like writing out my last wishes. It was that bad.
That's
I was like, damn, something's wrong. And I went out and was tested like 3 times, and never, it was negative every time, and took a couple of home tests, negative every time. But that's probably the sickest I've ever been in my life. And
I got sick in 21, or no, excuse me, in 2020. No, that's not right either. It's 2009.
I think it was 2020.
It was 2020.
Because
yeah,
it was right after
2019.
Yeah, it was right after the last Barley show, because I got sick big time at the show, from the show. The next 2 days, it was flu, though.
And I had something, and I was down for about 2 weeks, and I never felt so bad.
Yeah.
And then Mom got it. I say she got it. She got sick too. And, we had to take her to the hospital, and she stayed in ICU in the hospital, and then a rehabilitation center. She was in there 51 days.
Dang.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, but see, you might have had it then.
I could have had it then.
You know, because I got sick the day after the show, the Spectacular at Barley's in 2019. We'd had a friend that lived in D.C. come down.
Yeah.
And she was sick. And I'm not sick. And she came up and said hello, got in my face and whatever. I know I got it from her. Yeah. And, her being in a big metro area, and that was about 3 or 4 months before it really hit. Yeah. That could have been what it was.
I think a lot of people might have had it before it really took off. There's a couple of friends of mine, and my dad, he got really sick in January of 2020, sickest I've ever seen him get. And the doctor just kept saying, it ain't the flu, it ain't pneumonia, it's not this, it's just a respiratory infection. And so I don't know if maybe he had it then or not, but.
Yeah, probably. I'd say it was, but man, when I had COVID the first time, which was in 2020, and that was the year that we canceled the show. You didn't have a show.
Yeah.
Or you did it.
I live streamed it. We were supposed to have been in the Bijou that year.
Yeah.
That was the first year it was supposed to happen there.
Yep. And golly, man, I thought I was going to die. I had 105 fever for like a week. It was, I thought, man, this is it, So I wouldn't wish that shit on nobody. It was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it certainly fucked up a lot of people, man. And everybody, I mean, I felt really bad because there was 3 or 4 things I canceled with you.
Yeah.
And I felt so bad about it. And at the time I was, my neighbor, he was sick and had cancer, rare cancer, and I was trying to take care of him. He was a bachelor, and driving him back and forth to Vanderbilt, and then Dad was terminal, and Mom was sick. And
I remember it was 20.
Bad.
I don't know if it was 2020 or 21. I can't remember what year it was, but it was one of the times when everybody thought, okay, now we're good to go. We can go back out again. And we was going to do a Billy Joe Shaver tribute at Barley's. And it was in August of that year. And right maybe a week or 2 before.
That's one of the things I canceled on.
Right before that, it hit again. It was like, there was like a wave came through. And that show ended up being to about 2 or 3, literally maybe 10 people in the whole place. I remember it came back and everybody was worried about it. And I remember Lonesome Lance and his wife and there's a couple of people at the bar. It was basically playing to like the guest.
Yeah.
It was like, I remember Kevin Abernathy came and played on a song, and Andy played. Yeah. They were sitting at the bar watching, and the bartenders, and it's just a couple of people. But I remember, I want to say too, they started kind of doing some, I don't think we ever went back to shutdowns again, but it was like, they just started getting a little stricter with it again because like that second wave or whatever came through. I can't remember what year that was, but But I had a fun time working up those Billy Joe tunes anyway. It was fun working those up.
Yeah, I was sitting here trying to remember which one I think I was going to do that. He wrote that, Anything You Asked Me To.
Yeah,
didn't he?
So.
I think that's the one I was going to do.
Yeah. We put on a good show. We had a good time doing it. It was Pat Beasley's idea. He reached out to me and was like, "Hey, would your band be interested in doing this with me?" And we'll just put it together. And then he picked out a lot of good tunes, and it was a good time. I've always, and I missed the boat, man. Right around that time, some buddies of mine from back home that puts on shows and festivals around town, they was trying to get Billy Joe to come to this little theater we got in Pineville. And they were talking to him, and it was like, if we can get Billy Joe, would you open for him? And I was like, God, of course, hell yeah, I would. And then he ended up, I think he passed away in 2020.
Yeah, he did. October 28th. I just looked up.
Yeah,
yeah. John Prine was the first. Yeah,
he went
the first one is that. In our world, as far as entertainers or. He went out early.
Yeah, I won't say his was like March or April, seems like to me, or May, right there, kind of at the start of it all.
Yeah. I remember we had a big show planned for the Jig and Reel that year. I got the poster. It's hanging over there. I had been hearing about it, and I just kind of wrote it off, kind of like the
bird flu.
Me too.
Or
I did the same thing.
Some stuff like that, just like, well, it's not going to get here, or something, or it's not going to be as bad, or it's just, ignorance, naive.
Yeah.
But, and then I watched a Rogan podcast, and he had the dude there from, Minnesota University.
Yeah, I can't remember that guy's name. I remember that episode, though.
I was like, oh, fuck. I called Gina and I was like, has the state said anything about this? Or are you guys... No. Every time,
I don't remember that dude's name right off, but I remember that episode. And I remember a lot of stuff he said started coming true, and I was going, holy crap, that's when I realized, because I remember I was supposed to open up for Billy Don Burns. Like, I remember it was the last show I did was March 13th. I played a show it was a Friday the 13th. I played in Pineville. And the following week, I was supposed to play and open for Billy Don Burns at that theater, and it was set to go. And I was kind of cracking some jokes on stage about it. I was like, we're immune to it. We played the Mustang Lounge. We'll never get this, I was like, we'll be okay. And then Kentucky shut down that week, and that Billy Don Burns show got canceled. So there was quite a few stuff I kind of had on the radar that I was going to do that ended up going away. And again, you're sitting there thinking to yourself, we'll be back next month, or we'll be back next, you didn't think it was going to end up where it did.
Mm-hmm. So I remember you having that show, and I told you, I said, remind me, and I'll tell you a good Billy Don Burns story.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever did.
I don't think so.
So Gina Truitt down at Jig and Reel, she had the well at the time, and she called me up one day and said, hey, I got this guy coming in, Billy Don Burns. You ever heard of him? And I said, yeah. I said, he used to play with Paycheck and, this, that, and the other, and he's a songwriter, and Willie, and, had a few hits and stuff like that. And she said, well, I need somebody to open up for him, a solo act, because he's going to go on solo. And I said, yeah, I'd be glad to, She's like, I don't know how well it's going to go. Or I don't care. I said, I'll come do it for you. No problem. Because even if we didn't have a very good crowd or whatever, Gina always took good care of me. And it was just, she was one of those people that from way back in the day that was just always music. Always give somebody the opportunity to play and to do it at different places that she was managing and working at the time. So,
and you knew you were going to eat good too.
Yeah. I mean, they had a burger called the McGill Burger. So, So I went down there and I met him and started talking to him and stuff. We started sharing a few stories and different stuff. And he asked me, he said, you know where a man gets some smoke around here? And I said, yeah, I think I can help you out with that. So I had one rolled up, you know, and we went outside and smoked it, you know, and whatever. And so then we really got to kind of talking and telling stories and whatnot. And so, you know, before I knew it, it was time to go. It was time for me to get up there and open the show. And like I say, he's just a real nice guy. He's very soft spoken. He's like, all right, well, do good up there, son. I appreciate you, blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah, okay, buddy. I said, we'll give it hell. So I get up there and I'm telling you, I didn't hit it was one of the best solo shows I'd ever done. I mean, I was on.
Like that night you opened for y'all at the Press Pub. It was just on that night, too.
It was just electric, you know. It was just running through you. You just one right after another and hitting every note, taking chances and doing stuff you know. And I got towards the end of my set and I was only playing like 35, 40 minutes or something like that. And I said, well, I got time for one more song for you. And I said, you're going to have a real legend come up and play for you. A fella that's had hits with this one and this one and this one. And, you know, and I started, and I said, we got tuned up good before we came up here. And I said, he's looking forward to playing for all you people here in Knoxville and blah, blah, blah. And I did my last song. And the deal was, after I did my last song, I had to introduce him.
Yeah.
He asked me to introduce him. Mm-hmm. And he gave me a couple of things he wanted me to say, you know, for a proper introduction. And I did them. And I took my guitar off and put it on the stand. And I just introduced him. I took my guitar off, put it on the stand, and I turned around and shook his hand. And he said, way to go, motherfucker. God damn. You gotta get up and follow that fucking shit. Yeah, and I think he was about halfway, kind of like giving me hell, but kind of like, I don't know if I want to be up here right now.
That's great.
Yeah. So I laughed like hell over it, you know, and thought it was funny. And it wasn't maybe another 3 or 4 months, 6 months, maybe, whatever it was. It's that same year. And we had lucked up in getting to open up for Shooter Jennings.
Yeah.
Up at the Shed one night. I don't know. Were you there that night?
I think I was.
I think he might have been.
Didn't he do a thing with like Waylon's band? That's right. He did a set with Waylon's band, then kind of done some of his own music.
That's right. Yeah. And Billy Don opened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, opened for him, I guess.
He was in between you and...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I seen him that night.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, hell, he's been stoned since then. He ain't going to remember me, you know, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I walked up to him and I said, hey, Billy. And he turned around and he said, what the fuck you doing here? I said, well, I'm playing tonight. He said, you are? And I said, yeah. He said, and I guess you're going on before me again, ain't you? Cocksucker. Like that. And I just died laughing.
Yeah.
And at any rate, I got a picture made with him and a couple of other old buddies that I hadn't seen in a long while standing outside the Shed that night. But but he remembered me.
That's great.
But he was telling me he had some, he had gotten in some bad trouble with, I guess he kind of stayed in and out of trouble a lot with.
Yeah, I've heard that about him.
Possession and different stuff, but it was something about a crooked cop in Arkansas or something, something like that. And I guess Willie had went and he had stayed in for a while and was serving some time. And Willie actually went and basically vouched for him, however the right way to say that is. But and then Shooter did as well, and that's why he was on that tour with them.
Wow, that's cool.
Was that he had said, yeah, he's got work. I've got work for him, and he needs to be out doing this, and it was pretty cool.
That is cool.
Billy Don Burns. Hello, music lovers. Campbell's Music Room Guitars was opened and founded by our longtime friend Kyle Campbell back in 2017. If you're a beginner or a seasoned pro, you're always needing something. From strings, picks, or maybe a repair to your trusty instrument. Campbell's Music Room Guitars has a full line of all the stringed instruments. New and pre-owned, accessories, pedals, amplifiers, and here's the best part, it's a local, family-owned business where you will get the very best of sales and service from the owner himself. Campbell's Music Room Guitars has something for everyone. Did we mention that he also gives private lessons? Kyle is one of Knoxville's most multi-talented players and teachers with many years of professional teaching experience. Located at 5103 Kingston Pike, open Tuesday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Give Kyle a call at 865-584-0041 or stop by and tell him McGill and Jamie sent you and you wanted to have one more for the good guys. So you're doing Wayne Stock, you said. When is, you said the date earlier, but when is that?
It'll be February 3rd.
February 3rd.
And so far at the moment, we're on at 9 o'clock. He said that may change as they're putting the lineup together.
Yeah.
He hasn't released it yet, and I don't know anybody else is playing yet. He says he's going to be releasing it in a few weeks. But,
okay.
That's really not too far away.
No. Man, I was talking to somebody the other day. I think it was my mom, actually. And we were just talking about, can you believe it's already
Christmas?
I mean, it's crazy.
This year's flew by, man. It really has.
Really, it's true.
I was talking to my dad one time, not too long ago, when I was talking about how that, for me, I don't know about you guys, but for me, my 30s went by faster than anything.
Oh,
it seemed like it took me forever to get to 30. And then I was like 30, then I was like 32, and then I was 40. Just like boom.
Yeah.
And I told Dad that one day, and he just kind of paused for a minute. He's like, well, wait till you get to your 60s. I was like, oh, well, don't tell me that.
Yeah. Yeah, you just get from here on out, you just get
Yeah.
Older, fatter, slower, hopefully smarter. But, and not dumber. That sounded like Forrest Gump then, didn't I? Dumber. Oh, mercy. Well, that'd be fun. Wayne Stock's always such a good time, and I'm sure they've got, I'm sure that they've figured out someone that's, that the event will be for helping someone. So that'll be a lot of fun. I've played a few of those.
Yeah. I remember the time you did. I'll never forget this. And I tell people about it all the time. The time you sang "Oh Death."
Oh, I get that a lot.
Oh, man. That was one of those moments that I think somebody had it recorded, but I wish they could have saw it from where I was because I was upstairs looking down over the balcony.
Oh, yeah.
And I never will forget it because if I'm just being 100% honest with you, you told me he was going to sing it. And I was like, that'll be good, man. And in the back of my head, I was going, I would not want to be him. Because like to sing "Oh Death," I mean, it's such a powerful tune. And Ralph Stanley put such a stamp on it that I was like, oh, man. Well, and then you started singing it. I'll never forget it. It's one of the coolest moments I've ever seen. as you started, the crowd was kind of murmuring, making noise.
Yeah.
And then the more you sang, they just started quietening down, and there was just a hush fell over the crowd.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite moments I ever witnessed.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing to see it happen too. I wasn't so in tune to seeing what was going on until I got maybe about a verse in. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, I could see it then. And then I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I got them.
Yeah.
You know, like, all right, now you really can't screw up. It was kind of what but I told Greg Horn, I said, because Tim Lee had asked me to do it. And he was the one that requested that song. And I said, yeah, I can do it. I said, I'll be glad to do it. And I came back here and started working on it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I never had a moment with that song to where it was, as powerful as what it is.
Yeah.
In the subject matter and the words.
Yeah.
And the finality of every word in it's got purpose.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
It really does.
But I never had that, you know, from hearing it or whatever. And then I started, I got here, or not here, but back home and started working on it and stuff. And I'm telling you, I couldn't get through it.
Yeah.
I got emotional.
Yeah.
I mean, like real tears and just like it took that to, I don't know. It was almost like, you know, this is coming for you too. You do know that, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
You realize this, right?
Yeah.
That I'm not this respecter of persons.
Yeah.
And it can happen to you as well.
Yeah, I think that's what's
not so much as like a scary thing.
No, there's
just as it's just
there's almost a peaceful thing to it. It's kind of hard to explain, but when the line about with, you know, ice cold hands taking hold of me, it's like, you know, I've often made the argument for years that, you know, if you meet up with a lot of like take Brian that plays drums in the band with me. Brian started off, you know, he still is big into heavy metal and loves metal and plays metal drums. And then he has this love for like country, old school country and bluegrass and stuff like that. And I've always told people that, you know, a lot of those old school bluegrass tunes lyrically are more in sync with like the heavy metal stuff. Like I think that's why Johnny Cash did so well, you know, covering like the metal tunes, because it's
that's a good point.
You know,
I see that. Yeah.
I think that's why he sounded so good doing stuff like Rusty Cage and Hurt and all those tunes, because I think they're more in line with one another than they would be with like, because if you meet a lot of metal fans, they don't like the same bro country we don't like. You know what I mean? It's like they want more of the older, like Jello Biafra from the Dead Kennedys, his favorite singer is Buck Owens.
Right.
You know, and so I think that there's a lot of, you know, parallels there between them.
Yeah, which you would never imagine. You wouldn't put that together, you know. I think that too, a lot of the real traditional hard driving bluegrass stuff was more punk rock and roll than it really was anything. It just wasn't electrified. Yeah. You know, there was such power. It was so rhythmic, and the attack. Yeah, the attack of the beat and the rhythm of it was what made it really stand out. Yeah, to me. But yeah, I had a hard time. I remember telling Tim, I ran into him and Greg. I remember running into him and I just said, "Guys, I hope I can make it through it." Mm-hmm. I was like, I'm really struggling. Yeah. Like, I can't get through a verse without just breaking down, weeping. Yeah. I mean, I would literally physically weep and cry. And it wasn't anything that was scary or that was, what's the right word? Not like scary or mournful about it. It was just, it was just on you, and I hadn't, I can't remember. I hadn't lost, in the Christmas of 2018. I believe that's right. Yeah. I lost a really, really close friend and a mentor, Jimmy, from the pub, and man, I loved that guy dearly. I mean, he was a godsend. That little beer joint was a godsend. That little beer joint saved my life, man. Really did.
Yeah.
And it really put me on a track of being able to perform and not be afraid that it was just me.
Yeah.
Because I was doing all that stuff. I mean, we did some band stuff there, from time to time, or some guests, such as yourself and different folks. But it was hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
Up there, you and a guitar up there in a damn beer joint. And, but at any rate, I hadn't been through a lot of that yet. And it seemed like in 18 that, just thinking out loud and thinking back on it now from performing that song, maybe that was getting me ready. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm some kind of whatever, but it could have been.
Could have been.
But man, I couldn't sit by myself and get through it. Yeah. I mean, I'd be slobbering and snot and everything else. It's a powerful
tune. It really is.
But I did notice it about a verse in.
Yeah. I loved how the hush fell over the crowd. And, and I've seen Ralph Stanley in concert probably, I'd say 10 or 12 times because back years ago, there was a guy up around where I'm from. I don't really know if he's still alive or not. His name was J. Don Gibson.
Yeah.
And J. Don put on a lot of old bluegrass shows up at the Claiborne County High School. Yeah. And then, LMU College is where they're the ones that gave Ralph Stanley the name Doctor. Yeah. And so they would have Ralph Stanley Day up there and they would bring all these bluegrass acts up and they would all get up there and do their thing. And I remember watching Ralph do it one night at Claiborne County High School and just sitting there with chills all over me, just eyes running through your veins, watching it. And that's why, like, when you said you were doing it, I was like, God, I'd hate to be in his shoes trying to deliver that and follow Ralph Stanley. And then you ran that same ice through my veins. I was like, holy shit. Like, just the way that crowd quieted down. That's one of my, I've told people that story a dozen times, one of my favorite moments.
Well, that's very cool. It was one of mine too. Yeah. One of my favorite moments as well. And the big thing with that whole song was, I mean, kind of like anything else. I mean, I'm not going to be able to sing like Ralph. I mean, I could do a half-assed imitation of him or something. Oh yeah, or something like that. But I didn't. I wanted to sing it enough.
Yeah.
That it was, but it still had to be me.
Yeah, it was.
But
yeah, you was talking about Jimmy's, kind of being a godsend for you. I think we've all kind of got those places that we kind of grew up in or cut our teeth in. For me, like when I started off playing music and after the Nashville trip I had, I remember coming home humble from that. And where I'm from, honestly, if I'm just being brutally honest, I knew that I wouldn't, in my heart of hearts, I knew I wouldn't get enough to be in Nashville. You know what I mean? It's like I knew there were so many good players there and way over my head and still are for that matter. But I just remember coming back home and, starting garage bands and stuff. And then where I'm from, back then there was a lot more bars around, a lot more places that nowadays are all closed down. They're either a pawn shop or a Mexican restaurant now, you know. Yeah. But back in those days where I'm from, you had the Sundowner and you had the Mustang Lounge and places like that, but they all had house bands. So if you wanted to play, you know, they might let you get up and play a tune. But, you know, they were very protective of that spot, of having that house band spot. And so I caught myself venturing into the VFWs and the American Legions and like the little backwoods watering holes. And I ended up going over to Jellicoe, Tennessee, in my early 20s. And there was a place where I called the Starlight. And I just really cut my teeth in there. And that dude, he really, looking back at it, I didn't realize it was happening at the time, but I didn't realize he was giving me a place to learn how to do what I do. But like, I remember I played there. And the first time I played there, it was so different from the places I'd played, the VFWs, Legion, stuff like that I'd done. All of a sudden, I'm playing in this rowdy little honky tonk where everybody was ready to dance. From the minute you got there, they were ready to go, you know. Yeah. And I never will forget this conversation we had, like the first night I was there, and I was green as I'd been playing. My first bar gig, I was like 19, but like, so now I'm probably 24. I've had about maybe 5 years under my belt, but I've not been in that kind of environment yet, you know, really. And, I got there and it was like 5 sets of music. And then like the last set might go 45 minutes, but if the crowd was there, he wants you to keep going. It might go an hour, hour and a half. And you're like, Lord, I played from like 9 to 2:30 or some shit. Yeah. And, you know, so I was doing a lot of repeat songs and literally learning songs on stage or just singing a song for the first time because the band knew it. Right. And, I remember at the end of that night, I was like, this is the coolest place I've ever played. I've never played in a place this energetic. And he looked at me and he was like, oh, you ain't seen shit yet. He's like, this was slow tonight. I was like, this was slow? I was like, well, this is more energetic than anything I've been in front of. And he's like, no, he's like, tomorrow night, you're going to have a good time. And he looked at me and the band. He's like, are you boys married? And was like, a couple of us was like, yeah. And he goes, you won't be after tomorrow. You know, and it just got rowdy as could be. But I played there for a couple of years and really learned how to be in front of a crowd and stuff like that. And then I remember he ended up passing away, but I remember a couple of years into it, he went to pay me one night and he just kind of pulled me over to the side and he was like, hey man, he's like, I want to tell you something. And I was like, okay. And he said, because you never knew with the guy which way. He would be very brutal. He'd be very brutally honest. If you sucked that night, he'd let you know. If you didn't deliver, he'd tell you. Or if you know, he was real. He ran it like a kind of like a general and run an army. I mean, he was real, you know, like that. And
he stunk it up tonight.
Yeah, he'd tell you, you know, or don't ever try that song again. I don't know what you was thinking. You know, so. He kind of pulled me over to the side and he's like, I'm just going to tell you the truth. I'm going to be dead honest with you. Now I'm braced for the worst. And he's like, the very first time you played here, he said, you was green as a gourd. He said, you was up there learning songs on stage and you was taking way too long in between them and everything. And he said, I wasn't going to book you back. He said, I was just going to get through that weekend and never have you back again. He said, but the bartender, I think his name was Lee. He said, Lee loved you. He said, he loved you and loved your stage presence, loved your song choices. And he said, I told Lee, I'm never having these boys back. Then he said, and Lee's like, no, let that singer, I like him a lot. Just keep him around. And he said, I looked at you and I was like, you know, that guy's excited to be here. He's happy to be here. And he's like, I believe if I just let him do his thing, he'll learn how to do it.
He'll figure it out.
He said, so I just kept booking you back. And he's like, he said, now, he said, you're about the best one I got in here. He's like, so he said, I don't know what'll happen to you in your life. He said, I don't know if you'll ever become rich and famous off this or not. He's like, but you can make a living the rest of your life doing this. You know, he's like, you can do this. And looking back at it, at the time, I didn't realize what I had, but it was like that boot camp you get to go to and learn the ropes and learn what to do and what not to do. Man. And you figure out, like, I remember like people, would take a video of you, you know, you go back and watch it and you'd see yourself do something and go, I don't need to do that again, you know, or stuff like that. Or you go watch another band play and see a front man say or do something and you've been saying or doing the same thing. And then you go, that don't really look great. You know what I mean? But it was places like that I ended up cutting my teeth in. And then when I made it down here to Knoxville, I think I had enough of that under my belt to feel confident to go out. And I remember I hadn't been here long at all. And I went on Wayne Bledsoe's All Over the Road show that he used to do on WDVX at midnight. And I was on there doing my songs and Mark Arnold happened to be driving home and was just listening to it. And while I was sitting there doing that show, I never will forget it. He calls Wayne and was like, "Who the hell's that? You got on your show, and where's he from and everything?" And he's like, "Well, would he ask him if he wants to open up for Scott Miller at the Shed?" And I just remember sitting there going, "Holy shit!" I was floored.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't think I could have ever done that had I not had all those years of being in those places where I almost died.
Yeah, no, that all works into people all the time. They're like, "You're so relaxed. You're so this with the crowd, and you're such a good." Your stage presence and this and that and the other. And I'm like, well, yeah, but there was a year I stood in front of a fucking fireplace and heard crickets every time I got done talking.
Yeah. It's just like playing your instrument and singing, though. People come up to you from the crowd that, that can't play or sing anything. And they're like, I just don't know how you do it. And I'm like, well, 40 years of doing it.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Exactly.
I had a girl tell me one time, and this girl is a friend. I think the world of her. But she called me up one night, and I was in Hawaii, and I answered the phone. "What are you doing, McGill?" I said, "No, I'm over here, drinking beer and smoking a joint, watching a waterfall off the side of this mountain over here in Hawaii."
Yeah.
Or whatever. "Oh, really? What's going on?" I told her and everything. And she goes, "I wish I could just," and the way she made it sound, she didn't mean anything by it. And most people don't when they come across, when they say, "I wish I could do it," just what you just said.
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, I wish I could just, decide to go to Hawaii for a month or, whatever it was." And I said, "Well, you can.
Yeah.
If you decide you want to do it." And she's like, "Well, I don't know. I mean, I can't do that." And I said, "Well, you forgot about the 12 years in school. Then you just forgot about the other 4 years in school. And then, the 6 years at Gallenberg, and then the 200 shows a year at God knows coming to a parking lot near you." And I said, every waking minute that I've had since I discovered that I was able to sing, I have spent my entire life with music.
Yeah.
And I said, that's the only reason I'm able to do it. And she goes, "Well, I never really thought about it that way." And I said, most people don't.
Yeah.
I said, but while other people were out running, doing whatever, I was learning how to play. I was learning how to sing. I was in a choral concert. I was in a band competition. I was marching. I was playing in the pep band at the basketball at the basketball game, or I was singing the national anthem at the softball game, or, that's what I did, and that's what I chose. And, I don't think people, a lot of folks don't realize that even to such a local level that you have to do that, you have to be that way. I mean, or it's the only way. I shouldn't say you have to. I guess nowadays or any other time, if you had the gravitas or the persona, you could do it. But that was the path I had to take.
Yeah.
And I also had to be okay with the sacrifices I knew I had to make.
Yeah.
To be able to do it. Those other times when people were taking vacations, I had to work on my vacation.
Yeah.
I just didn't go to, when I was in Hawaii, I did house concerts. I did things with the radio station. I was working there some too.
Yeah.
Making contacts, meeting people, trying to get ahead a little bit and do other things. But, you're going to get in this business. You're going to get in you're going to get out of it what you put in it.
Yeah.
And the Nights at the Mustang, the Starlight, the Sundowner, the Jimmy's Pub, Prez Pub, all these different places you've done and been all over the United States is that when you finally get there, it molds you in who you are.
It does.
In your persona,
I remember when I did go to Nashville and record with Robbie Turner, I remember when I got in there singing, for whatever reason, as I was singing the take, what would be the final take of it, I'm sitting there singing it. I don't know, in my head, I just sort of flashed back to all those places. I was like, dang, I went from, I almost saw the Mustang Lounge when I closed my eyes to sing. You know what I mean? Because you do that, but along the way, for me, I wanted to write songs and be a songwriter, and for the longest time, I couldn't figure out how to, because you're in a place where you're expected to be a live jukebox, and people's wanting to hear, and it's always play something we know, and I'd walk out there sometimes and I'd play a bunch of mine right in a row and lose the crowd. And the guy that ran the Starlight told me one night, he's like, dude, you got some good songs. He's like, but just try to put them in different places. And he said, he said, that one song you got, he said, it's got a good dancing vibe to it. He said, come off one of your cover tunes that's got them dancing and go right into that one, stuff like that. And then along the way, what I did, I just all of a sudden, I remember this like a turning point in my songwriting where I had been writing songs, and I would try to write stuff that was, I don't know if universal's what I'm looking for, but I would try to write songs that everybody would understand what I was talking about. So I remember one time I was sitting there trying to write a song about this guy, this honky tonk guitar player, and I'm writing this story, and I'm trying to think of some famous honky tonk that's out there that people would know what it was. And then I said to myself, I've never been there. Like, I've never been to that place, but I'm going to be playing the Wooden Nickel over in Winfield, So I just ended up, instead of saying one night he was picking and naming some big place, I just said one night he was picking at the Nickel. And from there, I was like, you know what? Hell with it. I'm just going to write about these people in this crowd and these towns, and I'm going to name drop this bar. And
drop my things in there.
Yeah. And I started, if some guy got bounced out on his head, I'd write a song about it and come back the next week and dedicate it to the bouncers. Be like, hey, Nate, remember last week when you guys kicked that guy out? Well, here's a song for you. And stuff like that. And people started catching on. And all of a sudden, it was like, I remember when I moved to Knoxville in 2012, lived here for a couple of years, but I went a couple of years and didn't play the Mustang. And I was at the Mustang from like 2008 to like 2012, just solid. And I mean, from I spent all of 2011 and half of 2012 in there just house banding it.
Okay, not to interrupt and keep where you're at there, but so when you say that, was that like every weekend?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it was like that was your gig. That was my gig. Well, like I started playing there in 2008, and he would rotate bands. So if we didn't play there, we went and played somewhere else. Right. But then from like all of 2011 and half of 2012, a year and a half, I was in there every weekend. Right. And I might take a 2-week hiatus here and there and take a break. Somebody else would come in, and if I did, I'd go play somewhere else. But I got locked into those places, playing and like I said, writing the songs about the people in there. And then when I took that little hiatus, when I came down here and played for a couple of years, and then went back up there to play it, and I hadn't been there in a couple of years, I walked back in and people was requesting my originals. And the owner of the place, Marshall, told me, he said, he said, he said, we're glad to have you back. He said, there's some bands in here pissed off because people asking them to cover songs you wrote. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool, that happened. Because I remember at the time people would say to me, they're like, oh, you're spinning your wheels in these places. You're never going nowhere playing. And I was like, I know that. Like, I know I'm not going to really go anywhere playing here, but I'm gonna learn my craft and pay my dues, and I'm gonna get my songs. Yeah. To me, it was like I'm writing the songs as I live them, and I'm writing about these people I meet, and and close calls I have, and things like that, and they end up, again, going back to the idea of a song being a snapshot in time. You're just taking a picture of that time of your life. So, a lot of times, like I played certain songs that I've written over the years so long. That it almost feels like a cover tune to me now when I play it, because I've done it for so long that it's like, dang, I've played this for, a song like $3 Wine. I wrote it in like 2008. Me and my buddy Gary Lee wrote that one all the way back then, and
we still sing it,
and we're still singing it and stuff like that, and it feels like a
I still can't get the words right. Or the order. I get the words. I can't ever get the order of drugs in it.
That was one of the funniest points. That was one of the funniest moments making Dark Side of the Mountain when you and Perkle came in to sing the backup. One time it says Loracets, next time it says Percocets, Darcets. I remember he got out a notepad and was like, Loracets is first and Percocets.
I can't. I had to. I was trying to hang on. I was trying to be on you like a cheap suit with that harmony, and I was like, I can't fucking keep up with it. I don't know what's going on. Well, let me ask you this. I don't think this is a question I've ever really asked anybody. But and of course, we've known each other for so long, and unlike a lot of the other guests, we've actually had the opportunity to spend time away from venues, away from the bars, or away from places where we had to perform, and got to know more about each other.
Yeah.
More so than a lot of the other guests that's been on here already. But do you have a favorite song that you've written, or something that speaks to you more than the others? Or
I think one that does for me, if I don't know that it's my favorite, but it definitely speaks to me, and there's a reason why, is the song Manufactured Twang.
Okay.
The reason I would say that one is because I wrote it back in 2011. I was playing at the Mustang, and that was during our house band phase where we were there every weekend, And we had this thing we were doing back then where we would play the first set on Friday night. The first set would be all original music. We got up to where we could do that, and I'd do an original set. And a good buddy of mine named Keith Branham, he used to come around and watch us play a lot. And Keith always had some good ideas and good ideas for songs or good song titles. He may just throw you a song title, and one of those guys. And so one morning,
hook, a title, something.
So one morning, I woke up and I had a text from him. Man, I was hungover as hell. It was one of those Sunday morning coming down moments, And I looked over
this last Sunday.
I looked over at my phone.
Jesus.
I looked over at my phone, and he had sent me a text, and all it said was, "Hey, I had a good idea for an opening line. Run with it if you want to." And it just said, "My soul is an engine running on fumes, and I'll fill it with sadness of a Hank Williams tune." And I went, wow, I love it. In my mind, I'm thinking, well, I feel that right now. So I just laid there and typed the rest of it back in the text message bar to him, just almost as fast as I could think of it. I just typed it back to him. I left him room for one line on the end. I was like, it needs one line at the end. If you can think of something to say at the very end of this, say it, and I'll put it to music. So he reads what I sent him back, and he said, "How about the longer the journey, the shorter the stay?" And that was the two lines he had in the whole song. And I was like, okay, so I took that last line, got up out of bed, and wrote it. Well, in the song, I'm referencing when I'm talking about my old friend Luke, I'm referring to Luke the Drifter. Hank Williams is who I'm referring to in the song. And it was one of those songs that I wrote it. And honestly, I think the Real Billies might have played it, but I'm not sure if we ever actually played it as a band. But I ended up, starting when I came here to Knoxville doing the songwriter round, I'd busted out. But I went years without recording it. It just was in my catalog, but it wasn't recorded nowhere or cataloged anywhere. And then back in 2016, it'd be like New Year's Eve going from 15 into 16. I'd always had this bucket list thing I wanted to do where I wanted to take the last ride that Hank Sr. ever did from Knoxville up to Oak Hill.
Yeah.
And I wanted to take that back road and travel along that and see what that was like.
I remember you doing that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, here's what's funny about that. So at the time, me and my ex-wife, we get along great now. We're friends, and we've worked through a lot of the hardships and come to a place now where we can raise our kids and be friends.
Sure.
But we were kind of right at the end. Well, we were right at the end of our relationship and everything. We're going into New Year's, and I didn't have a gig. And I said to her, I said, how about, I said, what are we going to do on New Year's? And she's like, well, I'm not doing anything. She's like, I don't want to go anywhere. And I said, well, I've always had this thing on my bucket list. I said, I'd like to, drive from Knoxville to Oak Hill to see where Hank Sr. was found, when he died. And she said, I don't want to do that. And I was like, okay. And so I was like, well, what are we going to do? She's like, nothing. And I was like, well, I want to do something. So I said, well, do you mind if I do? And she's like, no, go for it. If that's what you want to do, go ahead. I don't care. So I said, okay. So I asked my dad, I was like, would you go with me and just take this drive to Oak Hill, West Virginia? And so we did it. And we get up there. I'll never forget it. We left. Now, if you go by the map. Like, well, if you try to like Google map it, it'll try to take you to interstate.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And it's only like maybe 3 or 4 hours from here.
Yeah.
But if you take the original route that he took, it's going to take about 6 or 7. It goes on and on and on. And it's funny because when we finally got there to the spot, my dad looked at me and he's like, well, if the drugs didn't kill him, the ride would have. I was like, jeez. So we get there. And, I wrote that song, and in the song I talk about I last saw Luke on a lost highway. Left me a shadow and a price to pay it. Now stand at the edge of his early grave. I'd wrote it all those years earlier.
Yeah.
But when I got there, it was a little gas station with a little yellow police tape around it, and there's nothing there in the whole town. And we parked across the street at this library, and I told my dad, I just got to walk over and stand on that parking lot for a minute. And I walked over and stood there, and the words of my own song was coming to my head. Like, now here I am. I'm kind of I stand at the edge of his early grave, like here we are. And I got back in the car, and she messaged to tell me we're done. Like, when you get home, pack your shit, or we're over. So it's a long ass drive. So we took the interstate back to make it quicker. But you talk about a quiet ride. I'm looking at it going like, okay, and it was just sort of like this end of an era. It was almost like I took my last ride.
Well, was your, I was just sitting there as you were talking about it. I was like, well, yeah, you were at your grave.
Yeah. And so, I come back home, and that was it. When I got home, she said, just go with your mom and dad's, don't come home tonight. She's like, tomorrow I'll just come pack and leave. And I said, okay. And I did. And I don't know, over the years that when I sing, I'll sing that song regardless at every show. And whether it goes over with the crowd or not, that's my moment to just sing it. Cause it's kind of like I said, I don't know if it's my favorite one, but it's one that I caught myself growing into. Yeah. And then I said that's when I was like, hey, let's record this. And I ended up recording it at John Baker's, and we all just came in and played it and made a band version of it and kept it going. But that one just for that reason holds a special spot too.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I've got a few. As I sit there and ask you that one, I was obviously trying to listen to your story, but I was also just sitting there trying to kind of figure out what's mine, and I guess mine would be True Story.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Because it's a true story.
True story.
And I had to live it all the way from beginning to end. And I had it for so long that it wasn't finished, and I just never could figure out how to end it. How was this going to end? I was always really bummed because I liked it so much. And then one day it was just like, well, you've made it through. This is the ending.
Yeah.
And, so I think that one for me is one that, again, I'm kind of like you too. I don't know if it's my favorite.
Yeah.
But it's definitely one that resonates and speaks to me every time.
Yeah.
And I know every line. I mean, I can, every line in it, I can put myself in that moment of time if I need to, of knowing exactly how, where, and when it came.
Yeah. That's cool.
Very cool.
So we did a show that it's in the can, but we haven't posted it or anything yet on our musical influences.
Yeah.
So give us some of yours. Like, who's your Mount Rushmore? These are the guys that.
Oh man.
For you, not
for you.
No, I get
not
it.
that anybody,
Yeah, no, I get that. Well, I'd have to say Hank Williams Sr., going back to learning the 3 chords. And I had Hank Williams Sr.'s 24 greatest hits on a cassette, and I just learned every one of them, Yeah. That would be a big one. And then Leonard Skinner's up there for me, because that's what made me want to find out what an electric guitar was and pick up one of those.
Mm-hmm.
And Waylon Jennings is up there for me. But I like a lot of the singer-songwriter dudes like James McMurtry and Ray Wiley Hubbard and people like that. They would definitely be up there. But those early influences would be more like Hank and Waylon and Skinner and people like that. And along the way, like I said, I started discovering the songwriters, you know, people like that. And
JJ earlier.
He's huge for me. Yeah. He probably be on my Mount Rushmore, my personal Mount Rushmore for sure.
Was before the guitar incident with the dog and all that, were you musical at all? Were you listening to stuff?
Well, what's funny, I love music my whole life. Like, I don't ever remember being introduced to Merle Haggard or Buck Owens. That stuff was always playing in the house. And my mom and dad had a really eclectic record collection because mom and dad, they're the opposites, you know, on everything. Like, dad really loved bluegrass and mom didn't really care for that, but mom loved like R&B and stuff. And if dad liked the Stones, mom liked the Beatles. If, you know, it was always like the opposites. Whichever, if there was a rivalry in music or whatever, if it was like, you know, mom liked Elvis and dad liked Jerry Lee Lewis. It was always like they kind of had those opposite opinions. And so the record collection growing up was a little bit of everything. And I listened to music my whole life and loved it and everything. And that's something too. I'm glad you said that because, you know, once you become a musician, you start listening to music from a different set of ears. But if I went back to music from my childhood.
Yeah. And sometimes that's great. And sometimes
it's a curse.
So much.
It kind of is. Sometimes though, if I went back to my childhood.
But you're right. Yeah.
Back in my childhood, I loved like Flatt and Scruggs, you know, and stuff like that. And I loved Jerry Lee Lewis and I loved Buck Owens. Buck Owens was a huge one for me as a kid. I remember in grade school we had show and tell, and I remember I got laughed at for this, but I took Johnny Cash live at Folsom Prison on record to show and tell, and that was like, and records was kind of fading out then. Really, those cassettes was more the thing, and I just remember the kids looking at me like, "What is that? Like that's your papa's music or whatever?" And I was like, "I love it." You know, so like when I was little, if you'd asked me that question when I was little, it would have been like Flatt and Scruggs and Jerry Lee and Buck Owens and people like that when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was little, I remember like when guys like Randy Travis and Keith Whitley was coming out and Dwight Yoakam. I didn't realize what an influence Dwight Yoakam was till years later. It was like one of those things, like, cause I just listened to it as a kid and loved it. And then years later, I started realizing what an influence he was.
It's kind of crazy you say that because I'm kind of the same way. I mean, like it came along at the right time, you know, or the right age for me. But then I got to see him one year at the Ryman.
Oh man!
And he hadn't been to the Ryman. In like, I don't know, something happened. He had gotten pissed off and he hadn't been back in like 20 years or, you know. Well, for sake of the story, 20 years. I can't remember all the exact details of it, but he hadn't been back. And it was me and Barrett and JC and Carl. And we all took a road trip down and got to see that. And I think maybe, was Robbie on that trip? I think maybe Robbie went too. But as he went through his catalog, I was just like, fuck, holy shit.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was.
I knew I forgot. And you know, and he had played something that I hadn't thought of in years.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh, I had a 92 Ford Ranger when I heard that, you know, or I had an 83 Camry or, you know, the Fiat, you know, that kind of thing. So very, very instrumental.
I can remember being a kid, when my dad's truck, just the music he had, the cassettes he had in there. I remember he had like Don Williams and all these different people in the truck when I was growing up. And I remember when Dwight came out, I remember one of the first songs I remember hearing as a kid was that Turn It On, Turn It Up and Turn Me Loose.
Oh yeah.
And I loved that. And, you know, I just, there was a lot of music I discovered for the first time in that truck or heard for the first time. But like I said, that record collection mom and dad had, they ended up giving it to me. They was about ready to just throw it away or have a yard sale and get rid of them. And I was like, you want these records? I was like, yeah. Because, you know,
it's my childhood.
It's my childhood and there's so much stuff, you know. Like
so I said, so they adamantly had stuff playing in the home.
Always. There's always music was always being played. And believe it or not, I actually played the banjo first.
This is a recurring theme.
Yeah. Back when I was a kid, I learned how to play a banjo first. And I just kind of, I don't know, I just sort of lost interest in it, but I started off on a banjo, learning how to play it. Because I still to this day, Flatten's Crows at Carnegie Hall is one of my favorite records.
Oh yeah, that was the one we had.
Yeah,
that was the one I had.
I was a big Earl Scruggs fan. I got to meet him at LMU College up in Harrogate. I got to meet him. He did a show up there with Ralph Stanley, and I think Ralph went first. And it was on one of those Ralph Stanley days, but Ralph actually went first, and Earl closed it. And I think he had just turned 80, I want to say, and there's like he's going to be signing autographs at the end of the night. And I was like, I had this Earl Scruggs and the 5-string banjo book that I'd had ever since I was a little kid. And
little kid on his knee. Yeah, and he's got the thing.
I think it's his son.
I still got mine.
Yeah, so I stood in line, but I was the last. Well, I run back outside because I didn't know he was going to be doing autographs, and I run back outside to get the book. And by the time I got back inside, I'm the last person in line, and it's a long ass line. And I'm thinking, he's 80 years old. I'm never going to get to him because he's going to get tired and go home. You know, he's not going to sign all these. So it gets about halfway. I go about halfway up, and they stop, and this guy kind of walks. I was like, "Hey, everybody!" And I'm like, "Here it is. They're going to tell us he's not going to do it." And he's like, "Earl just needs to take take 5. He just needs a minute. Needs a little breather." He's like, "If you guys are willing to hang around, just give him a few minutes. He'll be back." He said he would sign every autograph here, and I was like, "Okay, wow. Yeah." So I stood there, and when I finally get to him, to me, it was like seeing a founding father or something. I was like, "Holy crap, it's Earl Scruggs." I think that's one of the probably the most starstruck I've ever been in my life, you know. I remember my mouth got all chalky, like, what do I say? Yeah. Earl Scruggs, you know. And
he looked at you and he goes, "Another one of these fucking books."
Yeah. And what's funny, he just, for some reason, like, he looked at it and he goes, "Well, you sure have had this a long time." Because it was worn out, you know. Yeah. And I said, "Yeah, I have." And he just starts talking to me. And I'm the last guy there now. There's nobody else left. So I'm thinking he's going to rush me off. But instead, it was kind of the opposite. It was almost like, "Oh, well, glad this is over." And so he just kind of stands there and talks to him, or sits there and talks to me for about maybe 5 minutes. And I'm sitting there talking with Earl Scruggs. I was like, holy crap. And he was super nice. And I asked him about, because I had lost well, actually, it was a floppy record that was in that.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, "Do you have a CD by any chance that goes with this book?" And he's like, "Hold on." He asked this dude. The one dude didn't know the answer. And he's like, "Go back there and ask so-and-so. They'll know." So now I'm standing there while the guy walks back and asks somebody, and they come back like, "We're sorry, we don't have any, but if you'll go to this website, we have them here." And
wow.
So he was super cool and super nice. But
that's always a plus when you get to meet a hero and they're not just a complete asshole.
Yeah.
How did he play at 80 years old?
Great, man.
Really?
I didn't hear a clunker nowhere. He was on it. Wow. The whole band was. He had his son Gary playing bass.
Yeah.
And it was a hell of a band, and he nailed it. Yeah, and I saw him before that. I saw him maybe a year or two prior to that. I saw him at the Tennessee Theater, and he had Jerry Douglas on dobro and a guy named John Jorgensen on electric guitar. And I remember, the thing about Earl Scruggs was, he did start off with the traditional bluegrass, but then later on he did the Earl Scruggs Review with his sons and covered a lot of Bob Dylan and the Byrds tunes.
Yeah, they kind of went.
Yeah, I remember when we come down to the Tennessee Theater, me and my dad did the same down there.
I think found out what pot was.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
it was kind of like the Osborne brothers. There was a pre-pot Osborne and post-pot Osborne brothers.
Yeah, and Earl at one point when he was with his sons doing the Earl Scruggs Review, his hair kind of got a little long, kind of started touching his collar. He had like a peace sign on his strap. He kind of got a little hippie with it. But I remember when we went down there, my dad, he looked over. And my dad when I had long hair, my dad used to rib me about it all the time, about my long hair. And so we're going down there, and Dad looked over at me and he's like, "You're going to be out of place here." And I said, "Why you say that?" He said, "Well, you're going to see a bluegrass show." He said, I said, "Well, Dad, Earl did a lot like rock and roll kind of music." We get there, and it's just like a melting pot of people, and there's hippies everywhere. And the guy playing lead guitar looked like Alan Collins from Skinner or something, they were playing, and it was almost like a rock and roll show. He just had so much energy behind him, And when we left, Dad was like, "Well, I was wrong about that." He's like, "Hell," he's like,
You fit right in.
But yeah.
Jorgensen played with the Helicasters.
Yeah.
That's the same guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. We, I got the opportunity to meet Tom T. Hall one time.
Oh, man.
And that was a really pretty special deal. We had, Jeff Barbara had found this book online. It was right after John Hartford had died. Have I told this before?
No.
So it's right after John Hartford had passed away, and they were selling off the estate, and Jeff found this thing on eBay and it was a scrapbook of Tom T. Hall's career.
Wow.
And it had been documented and taken by Marie Hartford, by John's wife. And so we had this, Jeff had a buddy, and I imagine he's still his buddy. Shouldn't say it like that. He's not. But at the time, a fellow by the name of John Pinnell, who lived in Nashville, who wrote a bunch of stuff for Allison and Alan Jackson, and actually was the first band leader, the first Union Station. He actually talked Alison Krause's parents into letting her go out on the road to become a...
It's a good move.
Good move, right? Yeah. Paid off. But he also promised that he would watch after her, take care of her, and and so at any rate, we were going to a fella, I think it was not Chris Knight. What's the guy? Oh, I can't believe I forgot that. He's a Canadian guy. Chris is a bluegrasser. I'll think of it in a minute. But anyway, he was having a thing at his house, and we had gotten an invite to go there through John and Chris Jones and the Night Drivers. Yeah, that was his band, Chris Jones, and we got an invite through John to go, and we had heard that, or Jeff had heard, I didn't know. Jeff had heard that Tom T and Dixie were going to be there for this dinner. And he had found that book, and he called me and he said, "What should I do?" He's like, "I should probably buy this." And I said, "Well, fuck yeah, dummy, buy it." He's like, "Well, it's so and so much." I was like, "Dude, I'll give you half the money for it. Just buy the fucking thing." So we're getting a chance to meet Tom T, and this would be pretty cool to be able to hand him his scrapbook.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we got there, and of course Tom T was there, and Dixie, and dude, he had the biggest head I believe I've ever seen on any man. He had a giant head. I don't know why. It was just, but that was like when I first looked at him, I'm like, "You have an abnormally large head." I didn't say that out loud, of course, but I'm thinking it to myself, But anyway, we sat down and we had dinner and we spoke and we talked and kind of just small talk. I didn't ask no questions. And it was at the time, I tell you when the time of year it was when the movie Cold Mountain had, I don't think it had just came out, but it had been out, maybe it might have been out like a year or something, but it was still pretty topical at the moment. So we're sitting there and we're talking and he's sharing stories and I shared a story or two and blah, blah, blah. Well, we all get up and get ready to leave. They're getting ready to leave. And I told Jeff, I'm like, "Where's the fucking book? Go get the book." So he gets the book and we walk up there to him and said, "Hey," I said, "Tom, before you and Dixie leave," I said, "Jeff found something online and we bought it and brought it down here and said, we think you should have it if you want it." And he was like, "Well, what is it, boys?" Very fatherly, "What is it, boys?" And Jeff handed that book over. And Dixie just was like, "Oh my God, Tom, do you know what that is?" And of course, he didn't have a clue. And he was like, "Well, it looks like somebody's made a scrapbook." And she goes, "That's Marie. Marie made that. I remember seeing that at John and Marie's house."
Wow.
And then we told them, you know, that it was from the estate sale. But he had a song, and Jeff and I, we had a thing called Tom T. Tuesdays. We'd ride around, drink beer, and listen to Tom T. Hall.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what Jeff asked him. Jeff had a question about one of the songs or about something. And I had a question, and I said, I just got one question for you. And he said, yeah, what's that? I said, who the hell is TP? And he just kind of looked at me like, I can't believe you asked me that. And before he could say anything, Dixie was like, that was Tom Perriman. He was a radio promoter down in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And the line in the song, I'll try to remember the name of the actual song, but the line in the song was, and we'll go down with TP and catch crappie all night long.
Yeah.
And she said, yeah, it was Tom Perriman. He was a radio promoter from Dallas-Fort Worth area, but he had a big farm down there and a big pond and stuff that they would go down there and they'd catch crappie and they'd have big fish fries down there on his farm.
Wow.
When they were traveling through that area. But yeah, I just remember them looking at me like, that's the question you want? Who's TP?
Yeah.
Tom
awesome.
Perriman. But really nice guy, man. Super, super, super nice. And that was one of the few that really cool stories about meeting like you and Earl that it went good.
Yeah.
You know, that it wasn't just.
Yeah, one of my favorite lines ever from a Tom T. Hall song is the song, I Hope It Rains at My Funeral.
Oh, yeah.
I love the very last line because that line's nowhere in the song. Those words aren't nowhere in the song till the very last line. And he says, if I have one wish, I hope it rains at my funeral. For once, I'll be the only one dry. Mm-hmm. And I just always loved that line.
That's a great line. That's a great song.
Yeah.
I guess my favorite Tom T. Hall line was, God bless the little children before they're still too young to hate.
Yeah.
I just always thought about that one in Watermelon Wine.
Yeah.
You know, I was just like, man,
a lot of those
how
songwriters,
fucking true is that? And
a lot of those songwriters back then, that what I loved about them is, you know, their albums would be a roller coaster of different emotions. I mean, they would have some songs that just be funny, like comical as could be, and almost slapstick comedy at times. And then they would have like a really dark, morbid song, and then a really thought provoking song, and it'd all be on the same album, you know. And there's a lot of that you know you don't find very much anymore.
Well, yeah, you'd have something like with him, you know, you'd have Marjorie at the Lincoln Park Inn, and then you'd have that song is driving me crazy. I want to hear it again, you know, or something just completely off the wall, or silly.
Well, not changing the subject, I thought of something. I remember you and me and Van Eaton did a like a songwriter and around thing, like at Barley's in Maryville, and I never will forget that one. I've told this story before, but I just remember
that.
Like I didn't know Van Eaton from anybody. I didn't know him at all, and got there before you did, and he was sitting at the bar, and he's like, "You Brandon?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm Van." We kind of shook hands, we just kind of talked for a minute or whatever. Yeah. And I hadn't heard him, hadn't heard his music, knew nothing about the guy, and then we get up there. And I can't remember if I went first or you did. I just remember, though, I think you might have, and you was in the middle. I think you might have went and then Van and then me or whatever. And man, when he started singing, I just remember thinking like, holy shit, where'd he come from? Like, I remember thinking, now I got to go next after that. It was like I was on stage with Levon Helm or somebody. Just like this great voice comes ripping out. And I was sitting there like, holy shit. And then I got that CD of his, that Blood on the Ground?
Yeah, Blood on the Ground, yeah.
And I used to have a job at a donut shop where I worked like, I'd go in at 3 a.m. to make donuts. You have to have them ready by 6, you know. I'd go in that donut shop and that's all I listened to for that 3 hours. I would just put that album on repeat and just listen to that while I made the donuts. And it almost became a thing that if I didn't have that album on, I couldn't make the donuts right. But I wore that one out. There's a lot of good music around here. There's a lot of good albums that came out by people right around here.
Yeah. I hadn't talked to Van or seen him or heard from him in years. I'd love to know where he's at,
Yeah.
We wrote Good Man's Hard to Find. We wrote that together. We wrote he helped me on a couple of lines with Dreams.
Yeah.
I got a random text message one day that just said if I only had $1 every time I was broke.
Yeah.
And I was just like, from Van, and I thought, does he want me to write something back? What does that mean, Van? You know, because he's kind of out there too, you know, on some things. And I just wrote back, I'd light myself up another cigarette and watch it go up and smoke.
Yeah. Next
thing I know, because we had a writing appointment that day, we were going to get together later on that evening, and we traded 3 or 4 lines back and forth, and I texted him probably a couple hours before for the time we had set for us to meet, and I said, I got that song finished already.
Yeah.
So for you all don't know, that was if I only had $1.
Yeah.
But yeah, Van was he was an incredible guy.
Yeah.
I hope he's doing well, but he just kind of
disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah, I ain't heard from him either. We after that show, we texted back and forth for a while, and then one day we just, like you said, just kind of faded out. But I just remember that being a moment where you're like, oh crap.
Yeah, and the hell of all that too was that Van had no training.
Yeah.
Like he'd never been in chorus or choir and he didn't have the greatest voice in the world by any means, but like you said, it was like Levon-esque.
Yeah.
It was so much soul and so much timbre and emotion to it he was so raw and so green.
Yeah.
That almost made it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he was unencumbered by anything that he was out of his own way.
Yeah.
As we were saying
his lyrics always, to me, was like just like I said, it's not passing judgment, but sometimes you see somebody you wouldn't expect those songs to come out of him. You know what I mean? It's like, it was one of those things where you're like, well, there's a lot of depth there, a lot of deep thought went into it, but at the same time, like you said, it's raw and it's emotional. That's a lot of times that's my favorite stuff. There's times, I sing, but like if I started naming people who I really like to hear sing, they're not necessarily the best singers, but they just have a voice that is so raw and so real that I like how they deliver their stuff. I've played songs before, like, hey, like my buddy Buck plays guitar with me from time. Well, has for years. He'll play guitar with me, and it's funny because he seems to be more of like a fan of like just the people that could really belt and really sing good.
Yeah.
And there's been times like, dude, check this song out. This song is great. And he'd get about halfway through and be like, that guy can't really sing. And I'm like, well, I know, but that's not the point. It's like, it's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Hank Williams Sr. is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to say that Hank Williams Sr. is the greatest singer of all time.
Yeah.
But damn.
Yeah.
His son's a better singer.
Yeah.
Johnny Cash, same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Johnny Cash had so much character in his voice, it's like.
Oh, absolutely.
Sinatra's was that way. Sinatra's a great singer, a really good singer, but it was mostly character,
Yeah.
I always kind of had trouble with that too sometimes with like listening to stuff because I didn't, if they weren't a good singer, I'd have a hard time listening to it.
Yeah.
It'd just be like, ugh.
Yeah.
Well,
that's your wheelhouse though.
Yeah, that's true. I guess, in that regard, you come by it honest, but it's still, you're still, if you're not careful, you can miss out on an awful lot.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, good guys and good gals alike. If you're looking for somewhere to go to get your hair did, then look no further than the Chop Shop Hair Studio.
Our longtime friend and supporter, Cindy Lou, opened this spot located in Knoxville's very own Happy Holler back in 2010. Chop Shop Hair Studio offers a variety of services, including facial waxing, accessories, tools, and a complete line of men's and women's products, along with essential oils. A lover and supporter of the musical arts here locally and abroad, Cindy has a small stage with stringed instruments and offers discounts to guests if they are willing to play and or sing a song. The Chop Shop Hair Studio is a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll, and 100% pure style, just like our dear friend and owner, Cindy Lou. The hours are Tuesday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. You can also visit thechopshophairstudio.com and or call 865-525-4240 to book your next visit to go and get your hair did. Located at 1206 North Central Street, Knoxville, Tennessee, Chop Shop Hair Studios. Stop by and tell them McGill and Jamie sent you to have one more for the good guys. That's what I'm saying, you know.
I think people listen to music for different reasons too. I know there's some people that's just waiting for the guitar solo, you know, or something like that. And that's, you know, you got guys that are big into playing lead guitar and they're all about that moment, or they might be all about steel guitar, all about the drums or whatever that draws them in. And I've always found it interesting that, you know, that just how people goes about listening to music. You know, some people, it's just background noise to them. You know, my youngest son's mom, I don't know what her musical taste was because I even asked her about it. She's like, I don't know. She's like, I just turn on the radio and whatever's played in the background, I just listen to it.
Right.
You know? And some people do that, you know. But I've always just liked good stories. And I mean, I love good music too. Don't get me wrong. I love when the music's played really well and the band's really on point. But
I like a good story.
I always like good stories and storytellers and, you know, and I've always liked lyrics that would leap off the page at me and would make me think and just be a, you know, like Drive-By Truckers is one of my favorite bands of all time. And I've always argued that I think some of their opening lines are some of the best opening lines ever because like in the song Marry Me, Cooley wrote it. And it's the first line is, my daddy didn't pull out, but he never apologized. And it's like, you know, you're going to keep listening. If someone says that, you're going to keep going. And then Patterson Hood's got one called Heathens. And the first line is, something about that wrinkle in your forehead tells me there's a fit about to be thrown. You know, and it's just like, you hear a line like that and you go, now I want to keep listening to the rest of the song because they've got me with just a, you know, I think sometimes, you know.
See, I never fell into them either.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons was some of the guys that I was hanging around with at that point in time were so into them that they just, it was kind of like drinking from a fire hose. They just kept putting it on you.
Yeah.
And you're just like, fuck off already.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Get down on all fours for these guys or something? I mean,
for me, I've always explained it this way, like, and people wouldn't believe it if I said this out loud, but like when I very first heard them, I didn't necessarily care for it. Yeah. Like my very first introduction, I was just kind of like, well, I heard them. The first thing I heard them do was they was on a Skinner tribute where they did Every Mother's Son, which was kind of a obscure Skinner tune, and I appreciated the fact that they picked an obscure one, and I thought they did a good job on it. But then when I listened to their music, you know, Patterson Hood's got a odd voice. It's kind of it's
real odd.
He's not a crooner by no means. And so like the first time I heard it, I just kind of went like, ugh, you know, I've always compared it to this. It's like a glass of whiskey you get that like on the first sip, you kind of like, I don't know about this or not. I don't know if I like this or not.
Yeah.
But then you say to yourself, let me take another sip. And then let me take another sip.
Yeah.
And then after a while, it's the only whiskey you'll drink and you swear by it. That's kind of how they work.
Then all of a sudden you're drunk and you're following the Drive-By Truckers around all over the country.
Exactly. That's how it happened for me. I remember the first song I heard of theirs that I heard was the song Steve McQueen, and he just comes in, Steve McQueen, and I was like, what the hell's that? You know? And then I was like, let me hear it again. And I don't know. Eventually, I just fell down into that. And I used to get on the band's nerves with them because we'd go somewhere I had to listen to them. And I even updated the Mustang Lounge's jukebox because what was funny is like Marshall had this jukebox in there that was like, he hadn't updated since the 90s, you know. And it was one of those old school, you know, like the books like flipped, you know, and just had the CDs in there. And just the same songs was in there. And the way the Mustang was made, he had a happy hour bar that would open up first, and then the main lounge would open up later. So you go in there from like 6 to 9, you're sitting in the happy hour bar, and that's where the jukebox was. And it just was the same old songs, that in his mind was still a hit, but hadn't been in 30 years, you know. And one day I was looking at it and I was like, somebody said something like, he needs to update that jukebox. And I was like, how hard would that be? And somebody was like, not hard if we could just burn some CDs. And so I went out, me and a friend, and we burned a bunch of just random CDs of stuff and updated their jukebox. But one thing I did too was I put the Rillbillies music in it.
Of course.
Yeah, I put our music in it, and I would tell our friends, I was like, if we take a break and we're not going to be here for a few weeks, play our songs while we're gone. Yeah. And I had people in there playing them on that jukebox while we weren't there. So.
Yeah, it's a good move. We did that with down at Toots back in the day with the Drunk Uncles. We had our CD in there.
What is there now?
I don't know if it's changed again, but it was the last account I had, it was kind of like a biker bar called Why Not?
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
I think that was what it.
I don't know if it's still there or not. I mean, or if it's still named that or not, or if somebody else may run it or not. But it was for years. That was the. For me, I only lived 2 streets over.
Yeah.
So it was perfect.
Yep.
I can make it back to Toots.
Yeah.
I can stumble up the hill, to get home. But yeah, boy, we put on some shows in there too.
Yeah.
We'd move the damn pool table and put on shows inside there and have 100 people in there, and it middle of summertime, no AC. I mean, it'd be hotter than balls.
Yeah.
Sweating. But man, we'd pack 100 folks in there and have a hell of a night at a honky tonk.
Yeah. I remember the Mustang Lounge used to be hot because the stage lights were so big that the stage lights would burn you up.
Yeah.
And there was a vent that come down that was right on the drummer's head. And there was a drum riser there, and I used to step up on that drum riser and pretend like I was kind of getting into the music with him, and it was really just to catch a breeze. So people would be like, oh, he's getting into it, he's feeling it. I'm like, no, I'm burning up. I'm just trying to get up here and,
from AC.
Catch me a breeze from here.
Mm-hmm.
When I went in there with my son, my son and Jess goes in there, and I'm showing, it's a pawn shop now, but I was like, there's that vent that hung over the drummer's head. This is where the stage was, and that's where I used to try to catch that breeze at. But
well, the honky tonk is a dying thing, isn't it?
It really is. Randy Travis had that song, There'll Always Be a Honky Tonk Somewhere, and I always loved that song. And I don't know that there will be now. It's kind of like they're fading away. And the kind of places I really liked are really faded out. I love those little watering holes on the side of the road, some winding road, and I love those. It seemed like that's where just the I don't know, it was like, again, people would say, you're spinning your wheels playing there, but I was like, man, I'm having a good time here. They're good places to play. The people like them. It would seem like that, like, I think one of the hardest things for me to adjust to leaving those kind of places was like, I remember when I first came down to Knoxville, and I had lived here for about maybe a year, and I hooked up with this dude that was a booking agent, and he booked me all over like Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg, kept me busy. But I just remember all of a sudden I'm walking in playing in a room full of people that are eating, and they got their kids with them. And I've got all this rowdy honky tonk music that I've been playing, and my stage banter too. Like, if you're in the Starlight or the Mustang, it's like, you fuckers ready to party or whatever, and now all of a sudden you're looking out at this and you're going, and there's no smoke. And I mean, and I smoke cigars now, but the whole time during that whole era, I didn't smoke. If you saw me smoking back then, it was because I had got so drunk that I was trying to smoke to almost stay awake. Yeah. It's one of those things. But I had a buddy, Darryl Turner. He played in the Turner Brothers for years. And maybe I've done the same thing with the cigars. I don't know. But Darryl grew up playing in the Sundowner. He was like 16, I think, when he first started playing with the Turner Brother band. And he told me one time, he was like, He told me one time, he said, man, he said, weirdest thing happened to me. Because I saw him smoking a cigarette and I didn't know him to smoke. And this was after the Sundown had already closed down. And he came to the Mustang to watch us and he was standing there smoking. And I said, I didn't know you smoked, Daryl. He said, I didn't, man. He said, for years. He said, I don't know what happened. He said, I played up that Sundowner for 20 years and I never smoked a cigarette in my life. He said, but then after the band broke up and the bar shut down and everything, he's like, I don't know. He said, a little while after that, I just kind of got to craving a cigarette one day. And I went and got me a pack. And I was like, you was addicted to the secondhand smoke is what it was. I was like, that's what it was. So I don't know. Like for me, even though I never was a smoker back then, there was a time that I've sometimes caught myself craving it, just from breathing it in all those years. And I remember like playing in a lot of places when everything went non-smoking.
Yeah.
I played a bunch of those. And then there's a little bar down in Cumberland Gap called the Caboose, which I've always said it's like a mini Mustang. It's still got that kind of vibe, but it's just a little watering hole and they still smoke in there.
Yeah.
And, I played all these restaurants and all these places where there's no smoking for years, and then went back down there one night and played, woke up the next morning, could barely speak. It was like, so.
Yeah. Yeah. I really miss that. What the biggest difference I see too is that you started to touch on this, but the crowd's not as engaged anymore. And the dancing, it's like you said, that place that people were ready to dance, and all those places I played in the 90s, man, that's all they wanted. And slow dancing is dead. There is no such thing anymore.
And if you can get somebody up dancing, which we're pretty fortunate in a lot of our shows.
Sometimes we do that, yeah.
But if you can get them moved to dance, it's like, okay, we got them.
Yeah, I've noticed something too. It's almost like nowadays, if you're playing somewhere and people do start dancing, there's people in the crowd that looks at them like, what are they doing? Almost like they're laughing at them, like, what are they up there doing? Why are they dancing for? And I'm like, like I said, when I would go to the Starlight, I remember, the band would start at 9, and we get there early and get everything ready to go and everything, be sitting in the crowd. Well, about 8:45 would roll around. Hell, maybe 8:30 would roll around, and you'd have people going, ain't you boys going to play? We'd be like, yeah, we'll get started about now. Well, hurry, I'm ready to dance. I'm ready to party. I'm ready to have a good time. And now, it's like, you're playing to people who are a lot of times looking at their phone, and there's nothing worse to me when you're sitting there playing and the crowd's talking louder than you can even play with an acoustic guitar. Yeah. It's just like,
I know. And that was never the case in those days. We were loud as hell, and they wanted it loud as hell. And like you said, the smoke was, and I didn't smoke. I never smoked cigarettes, and I didn't start this till long after that.
Yeah.
But there's something relaxing about cigarette smoke for me.
Yeah.
And it goes back to being around my grandparents that smoked, I guess. But, those playing in those, I hated it then.
Yeah.
But now I look back on it and think, man, that was fun.
It really was.
And we'll get a show like that every now and then. And like these shows we've been doing at the Jig, the crowd's pretty engaged.
Yeah.
But they're still sitting at tables. And there's a little bitty room up there where they can dance or whatever. But all those places before, they had seats back, and there was a dance floor there.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things you take away from like around here versus, a perfect example is like anywhere in like Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi. Those places all still have dance floors.
Yeah. That was,
and people get up and dance.
Yeah. What's funny, and this is kind of a funny story, but
it's like
ever since the
Starlight, find you a squishy girl.
Yeah.
And get up there and polish belt buckles, man.
I used to say it all the time. I'm like, guys, find you a good looking woman or an ugly woman and get up here and rub some bellies,
Yeah.
But what's funny, after the Starlight closed down and I quit playing there, I would have this recurring dream about it. It'd be like I was there. And for whatever reason, it's kind of strange, but like in my dream, the Starlight would be in reverse. Like, I don't know why. Like in my dream, the stage would be on the opposite side of the bar, and it was like laid out different. So I got to Amarillo, Texas, this place called the Cactus Bar. And when I walked through the front door, it was set up like the Starlight in reverse, like my recurring dream. And I was like, this is creepy. I was like, this looks like the Starlight in reverse. And the people danced their ass off. They were there. It was like I went back to the Starlight in Texas just for a few minutes, and I was like, holy crap. I remember, and that lady, I didn't understand what was going on. I was like a deer in headlights. I was kind of like Forrest Gump when they're like, tell us about the war, man. And he's like, the one in Vietnam. And, it was kind of like that. Like, what happened was I get there and people started requesting my tunes. And I was like, how the hell did people in Amarillo, Texas know my songs? And I was totally confused. There's a guy was like, you play the Cumberland Gap for us? And I was like, So anyway, I'm totally confused. And when I was on one of my breaks, at one point, I'm talking to the lady that, I don't know if she owned it or just managed it, whatever, but she's like, are you having fun? I was like, this is the most fun I've had in years. I was like, people are dancing and getting into it. And I said, I just can't believe people in Amarillo, Texas knows my music. I'm kind of mind blown, to be honest with you. And she said, when I heard you was coming, she said, through the week, she said, we really don't have very many people in here. She said, but we have our regulars. And she said, they had like a TV there and she would YouTube the music. So she had been YouTubing my music for the weeks leading up to it, going, this guy's coming from Tennessee to play for us. So that's how they knew. Yeah. You know, and they were ready to be, like I said, it was one of those things. I remember I sold more merchandise before I started playing. Like I had already sold over $100 worth of merchandise before I even got started. I was like, what the hell? And people was going, what time are you getting started? It was kind of like I was back at the Starlight and I was like, here in a few minutes, we'll go ahead and start now. We're ready. And I was like, I've missed this so bad. Yeah. I've missed those moments. And like you said, every now and then you'll have one of those shows that'll take you back. Yeah. To that time.
Yeah. And you get them up dancing and you just want, you want to go right into something else. And it seems like, and a lot of times you can trap them or keep them if you, however you want to put it. But a lot of times too, I mean, as soon as that song's over, they're back to their seats.
I've had that happen. That's really like kind of a mind fuck for me. Like when you play a song and then they dance and you're like, I got them. Cause used to it was a matter of like, okay, maybe not every place was like the Starlight ready to dance right off the bat, but once you hooked them, you had them. Yeah. So you might play a couple. Okay, we got them now. Well, now you might go in and play a place. You may hook them for one or two songs and they just go away or they leave. And you're like, oh, like what happened? I remember Poe Hanna telling me a story about going to like South Carolina. I think he said he went with Kevin Abernathy. And he said, man, we were down there playing one of the best shows I've ever played in my life. The band was spot on. We were tight. We were all locked in together. And he said this group of like college kids like walks in the door and just kind of looked up at him, kind of like, what's a man doing in here? And then just kind of turned and walked out. And he was like, it just killed my whole spirit. Like, cause it was almost like, and I've seen that happen too. There's been moments I've had where people have been like, why's that guy got a guitar up there for? Yeah. I remember one time I played at this Mexican place somewhere out on Kingston Pike. That booking agent put me out there and I don't remember the name of the place, but I just go in this Mexican restaurant. And this is one of my biggest pet peeves in music is when you go to play somewhere where they've not really had live music and they don't really know how to go about it. They don't even know where the stage is going to be. Yeah. And you walk in like, well, I guess we could move these tables over and let you do it here. Yeah. I hate that.
Let you do it.
Yeah. So they start moving some tables around and it was me and a guy named Scott Houston who drums for the Kincaid band. We did a little duo thing for a while, and him playing the drums and singing and me playing guitar. And we go in there and there's this Karen there basically that's just, she looks up and sees us like setting up our stuff. She's like, what's this? What is this? And she's like, all mad. And can I speak to the manager? One of those moments. And the guy comes over and she goes, it's so funny. She goes, I didn't come here for music. I came here to eat with my family. I don't want them in front of me like that, and I'm sitting there going like crap. Well, Scott's trying to be nice about it. He's trying to be the nice, like, man, we might play some stuff you like, and nothing he says is going over with this woman. And I walked over to her and I wasn't an asshole or nothing, but I was like, ma'am, I'm sorry you're upset. I was like, but I just want to tell you something. I said, we didn't just walk in here with our guitars and drums just to mess up your dinner. I was like, I said, we were hired to play here. A booking agent put us here. We didn't know this place exists. I was like, we weren't here to crash.
We've never been to muchachos in our entire fucking life, lady.
I was like, we didn't mean to do this to you. And she kind of calmed down a little bit after that, but she literally, the guy walks up to me and goes, wait till they leave before you start. And we probably, if we were supposed to go on at like 7 or 8, whatever it was, we probably went on at like 8:35 because she had to sit there and finish her meal and she was mad that we were there, and I was just like, was like, you would have got bounced at the Starlight. It's like,
yeah, no kidding. You'd be leaving.
You'd be leaving, not us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I miss that, man. I miss the, it's like you said with the originals versus the covers and whatever. They just, if you play, we do quite a bit of covers too, but stuff they don't know for the most part. It's just they can't engage. People nowadays, their attention span's that long. So, they're looking at their phone or trying to talk over you, even when there's times when we're playing full band at Barley's that I can hear
the crowd. Yeah.
Oh my God. It's just, that's why I love the spectacular shows, because everybody there was a musician for the most part, and they wanted to be there and wanted to, it's tough, man.
Well, I don't remember who it was with us, but we did one out. I don't know if it was the Van Eaton show or the one with Jeff Lane, but remember the time we played out at Barley's in Maryville and there was a table right in front of us that was just like talking so loud. They were drowning everybody out and you got pissed and was like strumming your guitar louder.
Oh, yeah. Was that the night did I talk to him?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
It was like, I can't remember what you said, but
I know exactly what I said. I said, pardon me. I said, excuse me. Pardon me. Had to ask them, get their attention 3 different times. I said, can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
And they was like, oh, yeah, you sound great. And I said, well, I can hear you too. I said, I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not. I said, but you see all these people sitting in here? They came to see me and hear me, not to see and hear you.
I remember that was great.
And what it was they were residual people who had been there because they used to use that
wedding reception, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like a wedding reception.
Those big round tables,
company party, or it was an event.
Yeah.
And we had to wait on their event
to end
before we could even go in and set up and anything, which I was glad. I was fine with that.
Yeah.
But we respected it.
Yeah.
And we did what we were asked and we did what we were told.
And something too, like, I remember Lonesome Lance was there and Tony Brock was there and they was setting a few tables back and they were like straining to hear us and to hear our stories and,
Yeah.
I just started at one point, not at that show, but I just mean in general. I remember a point where I was, like take Lonesome Lance, for example.
Yeah.
He's a good friend. He would be right up front. I knew he was there to see me. And the few people that was up front to see me, I used to try to, once I realized that I couldn't bring those people from the back in anymore, then I just started focusing on a few people up front and I would play my entire set to Lonesome. It'd be like, okay, I'm going to play what these people, because other people's going to remember you.
Right.
You could bust out a cover and maybe pull some guy from the back for a few minutes, but he ain't going to remember it or care. But if you play to those few people that showed up to see you, that's what I started doing, and just kind of made it a point. I would, in the back of my mind, I would be like, well, if this place asks me to come back, great, and if they don't, that's okay. It's just like whatever.
I remember that night too. I told them, I said, I'm not asking you to stop talking and stop enjoying having your good time tonight. I'm just asking you to move a little closer together. And stop yelling. Stop over.
Because like you said, those big round tables, they were trying to yell at each other over the table and over the music,
And they got pretty put off by it. And the next thing I know, I restarted the song and I got maybe about a verse into it and they were leaving.
Yeah.
And everybody there started fucking clapping.
Yeah.
And I was like, now, don't rub it in. I said, there. And then, of course, by the time I think as soon as they just about got to the back door, I pulled the old, I thought they'd never leave. But yeah, we used to do that. I learned that line. That's about as nice as I can put it.
Yeah.
That they understand. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts to misconstrue what I've just told you.
Yeah.
And I've done it as politely as I know how to do it.
That's right. Well, you're good at that.
So shut the fuck up.
I remember one time, a funny story. I went off at the Mustang, and Marshall, the owner, he would use the F word all the time in his conversations when he's sitting around talking, but it was like he didn't want the lead singer to say it. Like, don't say the F word. Just don't say the F word. I'm like, okay. Well, I get up there, and there's this drunk girl, and she wants to hear ZZ Top, and she's dying for a ZZ Top dude. And I said, okay, well, here's what we know from ZZ Top. And it was one of those moments where I was like, well, do you want to hear Sharp Dressed Man? No, not that one. Well, do you want to hear LaGrange? No, not that one. Well, do you want to hear I'm Bad, I'm Nationwide? No, not that one. Well, do you want to hear Tush? No, not that one. And then I think she finally named one we didn't know. And I was like, I'm sorry, we don't know that one, but we'll be glad to get one of the others. And she just keeps on, play some ZZ Top, play some ZZ Top. And she just won't shut up about it. So I'm like, here's just some ZZ Top. We play Sharp Dressed Man or whatever. And then it's like, no, I didn't want to hear that one. And she's just taking over the whole show. And finally, I was like, I'm sorry we don't know the one you want to hear, but we'll play you another one and we'll do LaGrange. Well, Marshall didn't like ZZ Top anyway. He was more of an old country guy, and he was like one of the people I ever met that just did not like blues. Like, he didn't like blues or blues rock.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, at all. And he had a funny story, not to get sidetracked, but I asked him one time, I said, Marshall, I said, why do you not like the blues? I said, what's wrong with the blues? He's like, well, I hate how every damn song they start off, oh, my baby left me, she went away. Oh, my baby left me, she went away. So I heard you the first time. Why do you have to repeat every line to me? And he was a funny character. But anyway, I get up there and I start to play LaGrange, and she's finally like, okay, I guess that's all I'm going to get out of these guys. She gets up there and starts dancing. Well, I don't know if you ever heard the Hank Jr. version, but he does this little intro where he goes, and he's kind of imitating John Lee Hooker, and he goes, I had a dream last night. I heard Mama talking to Daddy. She said, Hank, that boy wants to boogie woogie or whatever. So I go into that. I always did that little rant at the beginning of the song. And she's right in front of me dancing, and I went, I had a dream last night. I heard Mama talking to Daddy, and man, she stomps her feet. She goes, no, I want to hear ZZ Top. And all of a sudden it's like, fuck you. I was like, this is ZZ Top. Shut the fuck up or whatever. I just lost it. I just completely lost it. And I see Marshall looking at me, and I was like, uh-oh, I've dropped an F-bomb, you know.
Lord.
And she's so drunk that when I went, you know, whatever the first line, rumors spreading around, when I finally got to that, she's like, oh yeah, that's it, you know. And later I apologized, like, he's going to be mad at me for saying the F word. So he actually gave me a ride home that night, and we get in the truck and we get down the road, and I was like, Marshall, I'm sorry I cussed that girl. He's like, buddy, don't feel bad. He said, I've been wanting to cuss her all night. He said, she was up there getting on to me at the bar over beer I didn't have. She was complaining about everything in here. He's like, don't worry about it.
We were sitting at Jimmy's one night, and this girl said something about, she named a song, and I said, I'm sorry, I don't know that one. And this girl looked at her and said, well, even if he did, he's an asshole. He wouldn't play the fucking thing anyway. I don't like that. And I heard her. Mm-hmm. I was like, excuse me? She just kind of looked at me like, oh, shit. I was like, what did you just say? She said, oh, I just told her you didn't know it, you know, or something. I can't remember now, but... And I said, that's not what she said. I said, you said I was an asshole and I wouldn't play it if I knew it anyway. And I said, I can hear you just as well as you can hear me. And I said, she popped off with something. And I just said, well, if you don't like it, you can get the fuck out. I'll pay your bar tab.
Yeah.
Just fucking leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes, man, you just
had enough. You just had enough.
Well, and you can't believe, you know, I was going to interject this a long while back in our conversation, but I seen a thing with Rick Rubin the other day, and he was talking about being an artist and, you know, and creating art, and he was just saying, you know, he said, you know, true artists, people that are really trying to create something, aren't creating it in hopes that other people are going to like it.
Yeah.
they're creating it for themselves. You know, he's like, yeah, we hope they say it sells, or, you know, he said, but, you know, that's the music that's still around. That's the movies that are still around. That's the ones that stand the test of time is because that artist didn't care. They had to do it for themselves.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I got thinking about that, and I was like, you know, he's really right.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you're not up there. I mean, obviously you're up there trying to do a good job, and you're trying to, but I don't have that going through my mind. I wonder if these people think I'm a good singer, or if they're enjoying this and that.
Yeah.
You know, but, what, have you got anything, you got any big plans for 2024? You got something you want to do, or something you're hoping to do? Or?
There is one thing I want to do. I wrote an album, believe it or not, back in 2014, and, it ended up getting shelved. It was one of those things where, well, I wrote it, and it was a concept album about all the times that I spent in places like the Mustang Lounge and Jellicoe and places like that, playing those dive bars. Mm-hmm. I've already got every song on it written. What happened was I wrote it, and that was what I was going to put out next. Because back in 2013, I put out an album called Sunday Morning Rain, and then I wrote the next one. But then when I went to John Baker's studio to record, it was like the first time I'd really been in a studio where that, you know, I was in control and could make what I wanted to make. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of those old Reelbilly songs that we had played for years, and I'd had the concept for Dark Side of the Mountain forever and hadn't made it. So I thought, well, now that I've got these good musicians around me and people like Barry Pohana playing guitar and stuff like that, I want to bring those songs and get them and record them properly and have them done. Right. So I skipped ahead and did that first, and then I skipped ahead to the next one, and then I wrote another one, skipped ahead to the next one. That one ended up getting shelved. So one thing I want to do this coming year is, because it would really be the 10-year anniversary of when I wrote it, I would like to get a group of guys together and do that, and go back to that, capture that old honky tonk country sound, you know, of the stuff that, because it's got a lot of the stories about the places I played. So that's on my bucket list for 2024.
Well, that'd be cool
to make that record, because it's there. I've already shared it with Brian and been like, hey, check this out and see what you think about it. And he likes it.
Have you got a name for it?
Yeah, it's called the Honky Tonkers Deluxe Delight. Yeah, because there's actually one song on it that's not mine. And it's a funny story. A good friend of mine, I don't even know if he's still alive, to be honest with you. I know he had went through some really hard times, ended up doing some time in prison. He may still be there for all I know. Yeah. But he actually wrote a song about me. And,
wow.
Yeah, and it was his way at that particular point of kind of. What's funny, he would write songs, and I covered a couple of them in the Reelbillies. And one day he's like, "Here, I got a song you might want to cover." Yeah, and he sent me a demo of it. And the minute I heard it, I knew he was talking about me.
Right,
I knew, and it was kind of like this. A warning about there's a line in the song that's like, you're basically he's telling me, hey dude, you're getting too far out there. You're living too hard, and you're going to crash and burn if you ain't careful. It was really a warning to me. Right. But back then I used to grow these big sideburns that I had the goatee, but the sideburns came down here and kind of stuck out. And there was a line in the song. That's why I knew he was talking about me. Because the first line of the song is, you keep talking all that swag, think it's going to get your name up in lights, but that stage is too small for a head that's getting oversized. And then the next line is
good line.
Yeah, and the next line is, and them sideburns on your ears are such a honky tonker's deluxe delight. And I knew he was talking about me. And later, I just messaged him back and said, dude, I love this. I want to start covering it. And he just said, okay. And then some time passed, and we finally had the conversation about it. And he was like, man, be honest, I didn't know if he was going to cuss me out for writing that about you. He said, but I just felt like you was getting too far out there on your drug intake and your drinking, and you were just getting too caught up in the honky tonk life, and I was afraid something was going to happen to you. So I was just trying to kind of warn you. And I said, I knew you were, and I liked the song. So I'm going to include that song on the album. And I just pull that line out of that song for the title. I thought that would be the perfect title
that's
for that era. So that's something I definitely want to get to, and, kind of get back to doing that, because when I started doing a lot of the, the social political commentary tunes that I've been writing this year, I caught myself all of a sudden going, I haven't actually written about something that's happened to me or a real life event in a while. I've not written about a heartache in a while or just a bad time. And so, I do have a lot of songs backlogged, and I would like to kind of take a breather from this stuff and get back to doing that. And I think it would be fun to do that, and just kind of relive. Because when I listened back, I went back and listened to the demos I made, and I just made them on my phone and just made a little playlist of them. And, when I went back and I listened to it not too long ago, and it kind of took me back to that moment in time, and I thought, yeah, I'd like to go back and relive that. So that's definitely something I want to do this kind of
that'd be fun. And it sounds like it'd be, like you say, you got it all lined out. You know them.
Yeah.
You ain't got to learn them before you go in.
Yeah.
So, well, that'd be good. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Well, if you need any, if you need any rhythm guitar or
absolutely
backup vocals or anything like that,
piano.
Absolutely. I've already thought of you guys, to be honest.
Be glad to help you.
Didn't want to put you on the spot right on the show, but I'd already had that thought go through my head.
No worries about that. Well, man, I've had a wonderful time.
Me too.
And it's been way too long since we got to catch up. But if you when this gets ready to drop, we'll make sure to let you know, and
cool.
You tell all your folks, and tell folks about your podcast.
Well, I've got a podcast called If These Hills Could Talk, and it's a lot more political, social commentary kind of stuff. The idea and the concept behind it was, I was just a place for progressive-minded people to come together and talk about ideas. Mm-hmm. And I interviewed Gloria Johnson, who's running for Senate. Mm-hmm. I interviewed her on the podcast, and I do that, and I'll do like the episode I just dropped yesterday is like a question, like a Q&A episode. I took questions from the listeners. So
yeah, I hadn't listened to it. I listened to the one with Wayne. And John.
I did a good one with Wayne, and so you can find me there, and then I'm all over social media as Tennessee Brando, or if it's not spelled all the way out, if Tennessee's not spelled all the way out, then it's TN Brando. So people can find me on TikTok and YouTube and all those things.
And then they, as far as the podcast goes, anywhere they get their podcasts.
Pretty much, yeah. I think I managed to figure out how to get it everywhere. Yeah. It started off on Spotify, and then I was able to figure out how to get it on Apple. And I've had people tell me, "Hey, I'm listening on," and they'll name some app I don't even know about. So I guess it made it.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, man, I'm glad you made it back to the honky tonk.
It's been a pleasure being here, man.
You'll have to come back and do another one.
Absolutely. It was great taking a breather from what I do and just talking to some good friends.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what this thing's about, and what we like about it. And it seems that the feedback we're getting, I've definitely seen improvements on our end, and from one episode to the next, and they've all been unique, and they've all been good so far, and we're just gonna keep plugging along as long as Jamie wants to do it.
Hey,
you want to do another one?
Yeah, let's do another one.
So you heard it here. Check out Tennessee Brando and Brandon Fuson.
Yep.
Fuson.
Fusion.
Fleeson.
Yeah. Fuson.
Yeah.
I've had to tell people how to spell it a couple of times. I got a cousin that does that when they mispronounce it. They'll say, "How do you spell it?" He's like, Fuson.